Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your lunch as well as had an opportunity to visit with our demonstrators out in the parking area. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm happy to introduce our next session entitled Innovating Autonomous Mobility. Over the next hour, we will hear from speakers who will present recent advancements and features in ADS solutions. Our moderator for this session is Carrie Stewart. Carrie is the Chief Strategy Officer at Miller Electric Company and is President of Miller EV Solutions. As Chief Strategy Officer, Ms. Stewart works collaboratively across the entire business to leverage data and analytics to drive improvement in business and customer outcomes. She works closely with project, operations, and support teams to boost and refine data capture to unlock insight potential. Carrie participates in the development of business strategy and manages plans to achieve corporate business objectives. And to that end, she works with internal and external resources to foster government and industry relations in support of Miller Electric's strategic initiatives and business growth. In addition to leading corporate strategy, Ms. Stewart was recently tapped to lead Miller's Electric Vehicle Solutions Group as its president. And in this expanded role, she is tasked with expanding Miller's national footprint and ensuring that Miller remains the leading EV solutions provider in North America. Prior to joining Miller, Ms. Stewart was the Chief Customer Officer for JTA, leading the team responsible for the entire relationship with the commercial and residential customers for one of the largest municipal-owned electric, water, and wastewater utilities in the country. Prior to that, Ms. Stewart served as Chief of Staff for Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry, providing policy and public affairs guidance. And from 2011 to 2015, Ms. Stewart was a Senior Vice President at Infinity Global Solutions, focusing on the areas of government privatization, public infrastructure development, general management consulting, and government relations. A deeply committed and experienced public servant and an inspirational change leader, Ms. Stewart also served as Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Jacksonville under Mayors John Payton and Alvin Brown, where she oversaw day-to-day government operations for the city, including and managing a nearly 5,000-member workforce, $1 billion municipal budget, and $164 million annual capital improvement plan. Ms. Stewart graduated with a BBA from the University of North Florida and holds a certificate in business analytics from Harvard University. Please welcome Ms. Carrie Stewart to the stage.
Thank you, Greer. I think that was longer than what's on my LinkedIn page, but thank you. I have the distinct pleasure to be here today on behalf of Miller Electric and Miller EV Solutions. And in our world, all AVs are EVs, and that's really exciting for us. I can see some of the Miller team's eyes rolling because I say that all the time around the office. I have the distinct honor today of introducing the next set of presenters. And first up is going to be Tave Rivas, Chairman of Avi Tech. Next up is going to be Gregory Crandall, General Manager for Holon. Next up is Dr. Ali Pecker, or Dr. Ali as he likes to be called. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Addis Tech. And last but certainly not least is our friend Fabio Tillum, Vice President of Business Development for Guident. So good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. I believe that we are going to have Tavi, you're going to be presenting first.
Thank you. Let me see if I find the clicker. Looks like it's here. So, it's really great to be back. It's my second time here in this room with most of you. I'm really honored and happy to be here, and even more happy that this time I'm not alone. I actually brought an autonomous vehicle with me that you can all try, but I will tell you about that shortly. I don't think I really need to convince anyone in the room why autonomous transportation is important, why some of the driver's jobs will be taken forever, and why some of the new jobs will be created. I think everybody in the room knows that and believes in that. But let me just offer another angle also for you to be easier to explain to maybe more skeptical people why this all is important. In addition to technology being the megatrend of our time, climate change is as well. And there is no way to address climate change properly without addressing road transportation. Measure it how you want, it's roughly 20% of CO2 emissions. And of course, electric cars solve a big part of that problem. I have been driving electric car myself for, I think, 4 years. Harald drives electric car, many of you drive. There's really cool electric cars that you can test and see up front in the building. But the real challenge still is that if the rest of the world is getting the similar consumption habits as we have here in US and in Europe, which is roughly 3 vehicles per every 4 people, this would mean that the world would need to quadruple the number of cars in traffic. And I simply cannot understand how the planet would sustain that. And luckily, the consumption habits of our children are quite a lot different from the ones of our fathers and ourselves. Our children don't see cars necessarily as property. They just want to get the most convenient transport from point A to point B. And as we know, roughly a century ago, American visionary and a great person in motoring history, Henry Ford, famously was advised to find a way to make the horses faster. I think today we are in a similar breaking point that not only the cars are getting better, but we need to rethink the concept as a whole. There is no point of getting from point A to point B only with Uber or only with taxi or only by driving. It's simply not possible everywhere. If you take San Francisco, for example, where people commute from the city to where they sleep or work every day, like 1.5 hours in a car, doesn't look and sound sustainable for me. Or let me bring a closer example. This morning I woke up at the hotel very close to Newark airport. It was literally like a mile away from the terminal, and there was no way to walk this mile. So I actually had to take a shuttle with a driver. I was with one other person inside the shuttle, and I thought, I'm pretty sure this guy who's driving me is doing some other job in a few years, because we are going to bring autonomous vehicle in this spot, and it will do the job more effectively and probably also more safely. So to create a picture, this has been mentioned a lot of time here, that also here in Jacksonville, and I really admire the forward-looking and innovative approach that the legislators have here. It's really enjoyable to hear that. I have been a legislator myself. I have been a politician for more than 20 years. And believe me, I have seen a lot of politicians, and most of them are not innovative. So I'm very happy that here in Jacksonville it's totally different, and we see that the legislators and the regulators are like looking at innovation is a chance, it's an opportunity, and that's actually exactly how innovation happens. Public transport network is definitely something that will be the transport of the future. And the biggest problem of public transport is simply that it doesn't go to your doorstep. It takes you to the bus stop, it takes you to the train station, metro station. You know, metro stations are where the city planners put them. Fine, but your doorstep is somewhere else. And there's options like micromobility or autonomous shuttles that will take you the extra mile. Easy as that. So this is MiCA. This is autonomous vehicle, not yet American made, but I'm pretty sure that this day will come soon because we heard about that to answer all the criteria, we need to make those vehicles in America. And actually, we are already looking for components that are, let's put it this way, that independent from certain regions in the East. So we want to be very clear that we have components mainly from US and Europe, and the manufacturing basically can happen very close to the market and should happen. This picture is from Japan, more precisely Kobe, and in Japan we are already market leader with close to 20 vehicles in traffic, and this is everyday transport there. Usually it's like cities of 20 to 25,000 people, and the public transport network is reliant on autonomous shuttles, and they are actually using. Now, again, probably not in this room I need to convince you too much, but I think it's quite clear from regulatory perspective that slow and small is good in autonomous driving. The one on the left is another Estonian company offering parcel deliveries. They have been in America for years already. We made them legal to drive autonomously on public roads, on sidewalks, at the speed of pedestrians already 2016. Why? Because I was regulator back then myself, and we understood that, you know, whatever happens, if this hits somebody, what is the biggest harm that can be done, really? Like, it's so safe, it's so like slow, it's so small, what could possibly happen? And it doesn't. The same is with Nura, just an example of there are many different ones in the world. Again, it's much easier to make it road legal than, for example, a big lorry driving 100 kilometers or 55 miles an hour autonomously between all other cars. Do you know about Moore's law, by the way? You know that processors get twice as good and half the price every year? Well, the sad thing is that this doesn't apply to politicians. And it can't apply, of course. It doesn't apply for human beings, for that matter. And that's why I'm very pessimistic that the actual ethical questions in autonomous driving will be solved. I'm very pessimistic because I really don't know how can politicians decide whom to hurt and whom not to hurt. And autonomous vehicles, they are very easy. If this happens, then do that. If this happens, then do that. And I, as a representative of this company, I cannot tell them that if you have a choice of hurting one or another person, hurt this one. I cannot tell. So we make the vehicles so safe and driving to a certain speed only that nobody is hurt. So that's the kind of reasoning that I understand why last mile and like certain ODDs will be legalized and should be legalized first. And just like Dr. Newman said, don't try to do it everywhere. Just start with those use cases where it makes sense first. I will skip that one and tell you when autonomous vehicles will actually take over the public transport network. And this will happen when we make it legal to have one teleoperator monitoring 10 vehicles or more. But maybe it actually is already like useful with 5, but let's say 10 or more remotely. And the safety operator doesn't need to sit inside the vehicle. If this will happen, and actually in closed areas we are very close to that already, but if this can happen in public traffic, I don't see why we would need guys driving the shuttles, honestly, or why we would need to take Uber from, let's say, 2-mile distance. There's no point to do that anymore. So I think this is a key, and we're working very closely with Guident to achieve that also in US. Of course, we understand that it takes time and we need to demonstrate the safety before we get the acceptance, but this is perfectly fine. This is how it should be done because regulations can't be too enabling too soon in autonomous driving. Otherwise, anyone can say that they can drive autonomously, and this is not what we want. And last point from my side is please don't take my word for it. There is an autonomous vehicle called Mika, the exact same one that's in the picture. In the parking lot, you can just jump in and take a ride, and please tell me later how you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tavi. Now we're going to hear from Greg.
Great, thank you. First, let me start off by giving thanks. Thanks to all of you for coming today, and thanks to JTA, and we've given a lot of thanks to JTA. Specifically, would like to give thanks to the Armsdale team. You really welcome us so well. You take great care of the vehicle, and I appreciate all that you do for us, so thank you very much. So today, what I want to do is I continue to think if I'm in the audience, I want to provide value. The value that I can provide today and that I was thinking about is how do we collaborate? So I wanted to take you on a real brief journey of some of the internal things us at HOLON do. And so by doing that, we have a lot of critical collaboration. And we only can get through that by continuing to improve. Sharing ideas, they're not always the same, but in the end, you come out with the best solution. So I know that the things that are here on the screen are things that we're all trying to solve for. We've seen them before, and this is what we're constantly doing inside of HOLON, is considering this. What you see here is the areas that we continue to look at, whether it be from the passenger, the operations, or the network. I've highlighted the most important person in this whole scheme, the passenger. We need to get them on board, and we need to make sure that they're feeling comfortable and continue to use the vehicle. If you look at the requirements, there's only 3 listed. There's another long laundry list of requirements that we consider. But I've chosen these to describe the passenger and the example I'm about to give to you. And the reason that I should have mentioned in the beginning is it's going to take all of us in this room to make this work. It's not about the HOLON vehicle. It's about autonomous vehicles, multiple form factors, and educating the public to make sure they feel comfortable and safe with these vehicles on the road so they ride them. So if I look here at the passengers, and my example that I would like to give is safe and inclusive design. When we think about this internally, my example is a wheelchair restrainment system. In Germany, when I was there, we got 2 or 3 meetings, and we had the purchasing team, we had the engineering team, we had the sales team, and the electrical team. None of those people are ever going to agree. They're not going to agree on anything because they have their own desires and things that they want to do. We had multiple rounds talking about what system is the best for a wheelchair restrainment system. There we wanted to take the easy route. We thought about something that someone could put on their wheelchair that could be a 1-prong peg into the ground. We thought it could be manual. All of those things that we were looking at were not the best for what we feel the customer. At that particular time, it was one of our final meetings, and we were all having critical collaboration, and our CEO happened to be in the room, and he was a little bit frustrated at the time. He said, very briefly, do what's right for all the customers. And then he left the room. We knew what the answer was. We will come with an automatic restraining system that works with the automatic ramp that comes out, the doors, everything has to work together. We'll have an automatic restraining system that the majority of people can come on, sit down, and restrain themselves and be like they were riding in a vehicle where they're a normal passenger. This is our desire. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we can't do this alone. And I wanted to also recommend that if you have interest in what we've learned, please come to the vehicle. We'd like to hear. We'd also like to tell you what we've learned. It's going to take all of us to make this successful. And a value that has already come out of this today is Sarah from North Carolina DOT. She came to me and said, do you ever think about putting a port where the electric wheelchair or a scooter can start charging itself? My first indication was no, I haven't thought about it and I don't want it, because then I have to do an engineering change and there's potential inlet into the vehicle. The value of us being together today, there's ideas that we haven't considered and we should think about them. And I've already thought about it more, and there could be a way that we could make this work. Again, please come together. If you have additional questions or things you'd like to ask us, I'd love to share. I'd love to get more information from you of things that we haven't thought about. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Gregory. And now we'll hear from Dr. Ali.
Yes. Hello, everybody. So, presenters before me, they already touch a lot of the similar things at the beginning that while we define the problem. Yes, we also believe that the current solutions like robotaxis, lifts, they don't solve the traffic problem. You know, there's a lot of people from telecommunications here in this room, like our friend. So if you design the telecom network like we designed the transport network, there will be a cable going from every home to other home, which is cars. So they increase traffic. If you increase the utilization by shared mobility, there will be more vehicles on the road, and at least 50% of the time, they will be a zero-person carrying vehicle, since they need to go to pick up the customer. So that's not the solution for the traffic problem. If you don't solve the traffic problem, you won't be able to solve the carbon emissions. Yes, the public transit is the only way to solve it. There is a driver shortage. There's a lot of capital investment required. So the automated public transit comes as a solution to that. But the automated public transit is not just self-driving. So it needs to be, since the driver is not just driving the bus, he's a security operator, he helps disabled people. So the vehicle and the system that you design should be capable of serving all those goods. So these are the things that we found. Okay, if it should be driverless. There should be a clear return of investment, so that you should be saving money to implement these technologies. It should be energy efficient. So since you are driving this vehicle with a software, what you can do is that it can be the best economic driver of that vehicle, so it can optimize the energy usage. And it should be ready for deployment. That's what we're doing. We are on the streets for 3 years now. And since we are focusing a smaller problem than compared to robotaxis, but we need to solve all the things like all weather conditions in that specified route. And of course, it should be accessible. Our vehicles are factory fitted, so we work with OEMs, and those OEMs provide all the cabling, all the installment, all the tests out of factory. The good thing is 2 of the OEMs that we work with, they decided that all the vehicles from now on will be autonomous ready. So even if they sell the bus to a non-autonomous as an electric bus, it will be possible to bring that bus to service location and put our system in it. So all the cablings, all the sensory enclosures, and specific bumpers which can accommodate radars will be inside the buses. So for example, and they produce this in scale. So we know that one of the OEMs that we work with, they can easily produce around 60,000 vehicles per year. So we know that when we ask 100, 200, 300 vehicles, they will be able to produce. So, and of course, when you're changing the driving style, you should also be flexible, so that new types of transportation should be possible. For example, we're gonna deploy to Buffalo, there won't be a specific bus stop, there won't be a specific schedule, there won't be a specific route, it'll be all demand-based. It's semi-flexible indeed. Normally we plan everything before, but we're gonna stop in locations depending on the demand. So Of course, the return on investment is saving energy, saving labor. And the good thing is when you have a bigger bus, per person technology costs are acceptable. If you're equipping a $30,000 vehicle with $100,000 sensors, it doesn't make sense still. It'll take some time. But in the bus domain, it's around like 10%, 20% increase on the main cost. So it is something that can be bearable considering that you're gonna save a lot from labor and energy. And of course, I thought that it should be working in different weather conditions. You will see some examples. For example, we are able to handle the bus stops. We are kneeling the vehicle, opening the ramp, and operating the securement system. We are able to operate, thanks to our HQ in Michigan, we are able to operate in adverse weather conditions, including snow and rain. We are able to perceive the traffic lights, and we are able to communicate with the traffic lights, so which brings a much more comfortable ride. And also we are able to operate in tunnels. The route that we operate in Norway, Stavanger, is one of the most difficult ones. Includes tunnel, includes roundabouts, includes pedestrian crossings, uncontrolled jaywalking pedestrians, heavy rain, heavy snow. So we are able to operate in all these conditions. And this is global. This is, we have deployments in the US, we have deployments in many countries in Europe and in Middle East. And for example, you won't expect that this is happening in Norway. They are parking on our way, so we are able to make an avoidance maneuver. And we are currently also we have a platooning system, which instead of having an articulated bus, you can have one mid-size 2-3 buses, which can work like a train without a physical connection. So these are the new things, these are the things that we are working on. But our system is factory fitted. We work with a local OEM. There's hundreds of year production experience with these guys. So these are the 4 models that we can provide. One of them, the vicinity one, is Buy American, FMVSS, ADA compliant, and it is, I think that it answers. It's already factory fitted. The bus is in Michigan. It'll start operating this summer in Sleeping Bear Dunes, then in Michigan State University, where we are integrating all these solutions, including remote driving from Guident, including automated wheelchair securement, ramp. All these solutions that I'm talking about will be there. And then in Buffalo, we're gonna start at the end of the summer. And the other model that you see, a small model similar to this vehicle, but it's a vehicle that has been used for 10,000 just in Istanbul, generally works on a sort of a semi-flexible operation. That vehicle is available for US, Europe, and Japan, which has a left-hand drive system also. And it is FMVSS and Altoona tested, had a very high score. And now it'll be also Buy American. And then these vehicles also produce not like classical buses, not just manual manwork. Also, they have include some robotic production, and they can deliver it in 4 months. So currently, the other one, the mid-size bus for Europe that we started just this summer, there will be 20 of them will be produced to deploy different locations in the world. So it is accessible in Michigan State University, in Istanbul Technical University. We work with around 100 different students with disabilities. They tested our bus for different types of disabilities. We are integrating our solutions with a disabled-owned startups, providing us some audio cues, video cues, and making easy, and it should be accessible for everyone. So if you have an elevator type of wheelchair loading system, you cannot tell it's an automated transport. So even if you just make people wait for the disabled person to arrive, it's not a disabled-friendly solution. Maybe you are okay with ADA, but you should, if you are making the bus automated or autonomous in all terms, you should give autonomy to disabled people. That's what we do. And we are on revenue system. These are not pilots, the systems that we are doing. It has a line number. People are paying for that. It has 30 services every day in the mid of Europe, and it is the easiest and cheapest way to try transport automation. You just take a ticket and get into the bus. That's all. As you see, it's integrated with the ITS system of the city. So it's no different from a normal bus. And it's connected. So of course, we are not doing everything together. We are working with Guident for remote operation. Remote operation is needed, not just for driving the bus when you have a problem, but of course, there are things that you need to detect inside the bus. What happens if somebody is smoking inside the bus, or somebody is stealing someone else's luggage? We already have an automated detection system which can understand these kind of cases and prompt the operator. Maybe the remote operator will choose to park the car, open the doors or close the doors, whatever, and call the police. So it should be connected. And as I say, it's globally proven, but locally available. We already deployed to Michigan. We operated in Michigan for 2 years in all weather conditions. And Stavanger is still working. Romania, now it's working in Tampere, Finland, in a 14 kilometers route, which has a lot of inclines, declines, a lot of snow, and in Istanbul and Ankara. Now we are deploying to Germany. Germany will be the first one to give us a type approval. So our bus will be type approved. So which means that we can deploy anywhere in Europe without getting a local approval. And then we're gonna deploy this new FMVSS ADA Buy America compliant bus to Michigan and Buffalo. And then we also win the operation in Rotterdam Airport. It's a service replacement. It will be carrying people from metro station to the airport. We also signing a contract in Australia and in Switzerland, Arbon City. It will be followed by Geneva. And you see all of these deployments that we made up to now as a pilot deployments. We are not, the other ones are normal revenue generating scheduled things. And we all did a lot of pilot deployments. In one deployment, we just carried like 3,000 people in 5 days. And for example, the one in Châteauroux in France, it was a 1-year test operation by Keolis. Now Keolis approved our solution, which can be deployed elsewhere. Also, Transdev approved our solution. Now Transdev is deploying our solution to different locations in the world. And we were the first one who get a NHTSA approval in the US for full-size buses. And for the Europe, we are the first one who operates in public roads and get the approval for this size vehicles. And of course, we are focusing on full-size, mid-size, carrying people in scale. Of course, there are retrofitted solutions. What we have learned for US is that you need to do some retrofit since there is not enough good OEMs, but we found one. We are trying to increase that. Retrofit is needed, of course, to showcase your solution, but it doesn't scale. It won't scale. For example, for Ford Transit, I think the original version also produced in Turkey, so we are speaking with Ford to make it factory fitted, for example. So that's why we are focusing always on factory fitted. Yes, retrofit you need now, it's a temporary solution. And people tend to compare our solution with small shuttles. I think they are not competitive, they are complementary. As he explained, we can carry people for the long route, and the small shuttles will bring them home. So there is a place for everyone. And of course, you know, our buses comes with OEM guarantee. We also cooperated with an insurance company. We are providing open data to them, and they are giving us insurance. So we are able to insure these vehicles on the route. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Fabio.
All right. Hello. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Fascinating autonomous vehicle solutions we've experienced these last 3 presentations. It's an honor for me to share with you what we do at Guident. I got to confess, I got a bit of a challenge. I got a lot to share with you. English is my second language. I have 10 minutes to do it, and I just burned 45 seconds. So let's go. This picture you see here in the background is our state-of-the-art facility at the Boca Raton Innovation Campus in South Florida. We inaugurated this facility about 40 days ago, and we invite everybody in the audience, everybody who's watching, to come visit at any time. We're only 5 hours drive time south from this facility here at Armsdale. What we'd like to share with you today is the value that teleoperations brings towards deployment of commercial autonomous vehicle projects like the U2C upcoming. And we deal with the tens of thousands of navigation edge cases that the autonomous vehicles present. And this is in the order of the tens of thousands, some people say on the hundreds of thousands. And this impacts the autonomous vehicle uptime performance but to 90+%, which means that there is up to a 10% gap situations that require human intervention. And we recognize in the industry that to get to true level 4 autonomy, we're going to have to remove the safety driver who's satisfying that particular challenge. Now, we're also starting to experience RFPs that are requiring from the fleet, autonomous vehicle fleet operators, the ability to deal not only with the middle mile ODD, but also extended to the first mile and the last mile. And this will be achieved by a mix of different type of form factors of autonomous vehicle shuttles, like the ADAS-Tech bus solution, like the level 4 special purpose shuttles, like the Holland, like the Mika that you guys are experiencing today with, of the demonstrations, and as well as the street legal low-speed vehicles, like the GEM 6-seater that is equipped with Perron Robotics autonomous driving system. Now, all these platforms communicate through the wireless network to the Guident cloud to provide what we call remote monitoring and controls services. And we do that in an end-to-one fashion. That is that n number of vehicles, 3 to 5 vehicles nowadays, to one remote operator. And as the autonomous driving system technology gets better, that ratio will go up to 10 vehicles per one remote operators, eventually to 50 to 100 as the technology gets better. So all this is possible through connectivity to the wireless network. At Guident, we have 3 ways to connect. One is the public wireless network with the standard United States Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile networks. We also do it implementing a private secure wireless network. At this facility in particular, at Armsdale, it's implemented with equipment from Airspan, which is a partner company of Guident. It's also based in Boca Raton, South Florida. And we also provide a third type of network communications, which is satellite. And that's very unique to Guident. And that is critical to be able to extend the autonomous vehicle public transportation services to rural areas where the public wireless network coverage is not as ubiquitous as in urban areas, and where implementing a private wireless network is not cost effective. I'm very happy to share with you guys that 1 week ago today, Guident was granted awarded a grant from Space Florida, an organization based in Cape Canaveral, for us to develop low Earth orbit satellite communications to serve that type particular of use case in the rural areas. This is the second grant we got awarded from Space Florida. We did this in collaboration with Novelsat, an Israeli company that will be presenting in the infrastructure track later on. Now, I want to make clear that what we do at Guident is not autonomous vehicles, is not autonomous driving system. These guys are the experts. But we provide is a software stack for remote monitoring and control services to make autonomous vehicles safer. And we're agnostic to the platform. We need to play with every autonomous vehicle vendor, ADS vendor. And as a matter of fact, we partner with ADAS-Tech, with Perron Robotics, with Ovitech, with OXA, and with any other platform that is interested to provide this type of services. And the way we integrate to these platforms is through a cloud integration to the autonomous driving system when available. We also provide what's called a VTU, a in-vehicle teleoperation unit, which is an NVIDIA computing device that collects the streams of the high-definition video cameras in the vehicle and broadcasts that through a router to 4G, 5G, or satellite network. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but we provide all sorts of dashboards of real-time status on sensors, on doors, opening doors, closing the doors, communication, signal strengths, etc. One thing we're very proud to announce here, see if this works. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Is that we're integrating a 3D operation design domain dashboard, which is a 3D model that allows you to be able to actually observe the entire ODD and the vehicles moving around. It's a 3D model representation, and we do this in collaboration with a company out of Spain called XRF, and we got Agustina here that is showing at the Remote Monitoring Control Center. He's doing the demonstration. I ask you guys to please spend the 5 minutes to wear those goggles and see how you can visualize the entire ODD and the fleet of vehicles moving around. Is actually fascinating technology. So when the vehicle, an edge case is presented, there's 2 ways that you can that the remote operator is going to complete that mission. One is what we call remote assist. That is in the case that the autonomous driving system recognizes the edge case and the options that it could do to overcome, and it presents on the screen of the remote operator what those options are. The operator will choose that option, and then the autonomous driving system will execute that maneuver and then continue on its mission path. Now, when that's not available, when the autonomous driving system issues a request to the remote operator, through the high-definition video cameras, the remote operator will gain situational awareness and then decide to proceed with a remote drive, doing that at very slow speed and for a very short distance. Now, through this process, we provide a passenger communications module, so a video session is activated and the remote operator informs the passengers that is taking over, and then there's also a button inside the vehicle, so on demand, a passenger could invoke and have a video session with remote operator for any kind of assistance that he may need. And here's the value of this conference. We're actually very proud to announce that given our experience of the 2023 National Autonomous Vehicle Day Conference, we heard from the audience, there were some questions, and we are integrating speech recognition technology to be able to assist passengers with impaired vision so they can invoke a conversation with the remote operator as needed. Other features that we provide is a motion alert signaling. When the vehicle is being remote driven, it issues a beep alert for the environment so people to be aware that the vehicle is moving at slow speed. And also, we're integrating a pedestrian interaction module that is being able to talk to pedestrians that may be in the way through a speaker and a microphone situation. We also provide an artificial intelligence predict and prevent module. What this consists of is the integration to real-time data sources like weather, traffic, work zones, and also first responders that may be approaching the ODD, issuing what we call a yellow incident risk level alert to remote operator to be aware that there may be externalities coming to impact the route. For safe remote routing, we also provide the ability, when provided by the ADS, to drive with sensors on. That means with the LiDARs, with the cameras, with the radar, to prevent any possible collision. Also, the driver is assisted with dynamic trajectory guidelines and bird's eye view of the vehicle moving and what's happening on the environment. All this is done also with speed lock technology, so we limit the speed that remote driving occurs up to 5 miles per hour, and also range locks, that is the distance between how far the remote driving could happen. All right, I'm there. So I'm very happy to share with you that the biggest value of teleoperations, we believe, is accelerating the public acceptance of autonomous vehicle solutions and technologies. And we can gain the trust from the public by providing the human-in-the-loop supervision that the teleoperator provides, and also the passenger communication opportunities. Another key value that teleoperation provides is dealing with the job displacement concerns from the public, and we do that through workforce development, through training to be able to move the bus operator from the bus to the desktop. And finally, perhaps the most important one is that when everything else fails and we need to get that vehicle out of the road, we can do a virtual truck type of function, moving the vehicle to the side of the road to prevent traffic obstructions, as well as the bad press that typically comes with it. And just want to leave you guys with, we're doing various demonstrations, including the surveillance robot, and invite you guys to come and experience teleoperation in the MICA and also at the Remote Monitoring Control Center over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabio. So we have time for questions from the audience, and wanted to open it up to the audience to talk to any of the companies that are represented here today. Do we have questions? Got one there in the back.
Hello there, I'm Mauricio again. Sorry, I'm asking another question again, but this is specifically for Holon. I know I've spoken with you individually, sir, but just wanted to see if I can get some questions for some reporting I'm doing here today. Mainly wanted to ask on just what is Holon's future here in the city and manufacturing plans.
Certainly, you and I had to briefly discuss before with a partner like JTA. This is what we're looking for, and for a launch area, excuse me, that we can work together, and then definitely with the team here at JTA and the entire city. This is the type of deployment that we want. Plus, there's, I think, good. It's not a complex launch, but it's just the right amount. It's like the different, you know, the baby bear, the papa bear, and the mama bear. This is just the right amount. You had asked about future manufacturing. Yes, the vehicle will be made in the United States, and it will meet the Buy America requirements. Thank you.
Any other questions? Got one over here.
Good afternoon. This question is for Fabio. This is Tony Karam. I'm the Global Director for ANSYS, a leading simulation company, and I lead actually a lot of our simulation and autonomy, our physics-based simulation. You mentioned a little bit about the tracks or the 3D environment that you guys are modeling or have modeled. Do you see a role for simulation and you know, the homologation and the acceptance of these vehicles? Is that something you're looking to incorporate? And if yes, you know, how do you see that vision in implementing simulation technology?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is my mic on? Hello? Okay. Yeah, so we actually, this is something we are integrating at the moment, is new technology that we just came across, and we're focusing, the Guident is focusing specifically in adding value to the dashboard environment, and what we're implementing right now is the ability to visualize in a 3D model the actual ODD, so that the fleet operator can have access to how the fleet is moving around the ODD, not only from the Remote Monitoring Control Center, but this gives the freedom to be able to do it from anywhere, from the headquarters to show it to possibly passengers, etc. Now, the question you raised is actually a great question. I got a similar question asked about an hour ago. What are use cases to use this technology? And the suggestion, or the question was about using it for training related to the autonomous vehicle experience. So for perhaps safety operators to start with, and train different, I guess, operators on how to deal with specific situations. Now, the simulation aspect is something actually that we started a conversation early on with one of the ADS manufacturers, and we started that conversation. We haven't thought about it yet, but I think there is probably plenty of room to work in that space.
I can add to that about using the simulation for acceptance. The new rule in Europe, the standard for autonomous vehicles, requires you to run certain simulation scenarios to be able to get the type approval. But it says in a licensed simulation too, and accepted by the standards, but it doesn't define what does it mean by licensed simulation tool. So it's a still open question, but it seems like there's a preparation to put some testing in simulation to the acceptance of the vehicle for open road usage in the European standard.
Other questions?
Hey there. So, if this project didn't exist, this is for Holon, would you be considering Jacksonville is the first part of that? And the second part of that question is, can you talk more about the waiver you've submitted to NHTSA? Is it specific to the U2C project?
So let's start off on your first question. So is Holon considering Jacksonville? We are considering several locations in the United States. Jacksonville is one of them. The other places that we are considering, as you would imagine, that we have production locations because we are a Tier 1, that's our parent company, Tier 1 auto parts supplier, so that we would have potential synergies there. But as I can see that from working with the city of Jacksonville, also with JTA, and us being here today, Jacksonville is a great place to be, I think. Plus, the city seems very welcoming for autonomous vehicles. Your second question was NHTSA. Yes, in April 2023, we submitted our petition to NHTSA. We received a list of questions back from them in February of this year. And then we have most recently, I just had a meeting with them to understand to talk about the questions and make sure that we were on the right track. But we will be working together with them in order to get full FMVSS compliance. Does that answer your question?
All right. Are there other questions? Well, I don't see any in the audience, but I do have a couple of questions that came up in earlier conversations that you all were having around today. And for some of the manufacturers, considering the rapid advancements in ADS technology, how are you addressing the issues of scalability and interoperability to ensure your solutions can be widely adopted and integrated with existing transportation systems?
I don't know if I understood the question, but these autonomous driving solutions, they are not something from a distant future. They are existing. You can try them out right here in Jacksonville today. So scalability is mainly dependent on commercial barriers, and commercial barriers are mainly dependent on the fact that currently we still need a safety operator within the vehicle. If you have be it a big bus or small shuttle, doesn't really matter, with a lot of sensors, it will be at least somewhat more expensive than similar vehicle without all the smartness. And if you have, instead of a driver, you have a guy who actually knows how to operate, his salary will probably be somewhat higher than the driver's. So until this requirement is there, of course it needs to be subsidized, of course it needs to be piloted together with the government and municipalities. Once work ahead of us.
Anything, Greg or Dr. Ali,
From
you want to add?
From the Holon perspective, this is why it's so important for us to have a competent partner we have with Beep, because we are the manufacturer. We need to have a deployer, and the deployer then works with the local transit authority to make sure that this is seamless intervention. So scalability from the manufacturing standpoint is where Holon and Butler Automotive have our expertise. Beep's expertise is deployment. And together, that will provide a seamless solution.
And anything about interoperability, Dr. Ali, or scalability you'd like to add from the manufacturer perspective?
About the scalability, at the end of the day, in most of the cases, if you're a technology vendor like us, you need to offload most of the non-functional requirements to partners. And automotive is an area where they always have a lot of, a supply chain. A lot of people provide something. So we are getting hardware from different places. So we are using some other technologies like Guident. And then we are already working with a OEM who can manufacture in scale. So I think that the biggest difficulty for scaling is that most of the new technologies are not automotive grade. So these LiDARs, radars are automotive grade, LiDARs and maybe some parts to make the vehicle more fault tolerant are not even, standards are not even defined yet. So I think the hardware development is lagging a little bit behind, especially in these non-functional requirements. Now, maybe they are doing a good job detecting an object, but you need like several other standards like functional safety, things like that. So there should be hardware doing for that. For interoperability, I think that at the end of the day, road network should also get more sophisticated. You know, I'm always giving this example. 100 years ago, there was no pavement, there was no gas station, there was no traffic light, traffic rules. And then because of the vehicles improved, so people generated traffic rules. So I think that when you make the vehicles automated, it needs to be also connected. So there will need a better networks. And then I think that communicating with traffic lights, intersections, this kind of things and open standards for that intercommunication will make the interoperability much easier. Generally, this is very difficult since the vehicle companies are competing with them very well. So, for example, it didn't go through. You know, they don't want to share a harsh brake message to the cheapest vehicle following them, but it can be done in public transit. So, you know, since it's always easier to get an information rather than trying to sensing it. So any type of sensor will have the same problems of human eye, but with the communication you can get an exact data. So for interoperability, I see that vehicular communication and generic communication networks are very important.
Gentlemen, I'm getting the wrap signal from over here. This was an excellent session. I want to thank you all for being here today, and please join me in giving these gentlemen a round of applause.
Standing up.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I like
Yeah,
that idea.
like this, like a concert and ending video.
Thank you.
Did you say Sleeping Bear Dunes?
Yeah.
This year?
This year. Yeah. At the end of.
Thank you. All right. Have a great weekend. You too.
All right. Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, allow us for a few minutes of break while we switch out the microphones, and then we'll call up our next panelists. Thank you.
wanted to take a look at him while everything's going great. And that was a great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to resume the program. We now will turn our attention to the next session, Building and Deploying a Driverless Future. This discussion will focus on the entities, both public and private sectors, and their efforts to build this autonomous transportation future now and laying the groundwork for the future. This 60-minute panel discussion will be moderated by Scott Belcher. Scott is the Executive Director of the Automated, Connected, Electric, Shared Mobility Coalition, or ACES Mobility Coalition, a newly formed public transportation-led multi-sector coalition to educate and promote appropriate regulation and adoption of shared use mobility, providing first and last mile connectivity to support public transportation, safety, the environment, and workforce development. Mr. Belcher is also the CEO of SFB Consulting and a co-founder of Cyberbase. Previously, he served as the CEO of the Telecommunications Industry Association and of ITS America. Mr. Belcher has also held executive leadership positions at several other prominent trade associations, practiced environmental law with Beveridge and Diamond, PC, served as a professional staff for the U.S. House of Representatives Appropriations Committee, and served in several positions at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. He serves on multiple private advisory boards and is active in several industry associations. Mr. Belcher received his law degree at the University of Virginia, his MPP at Georgetown, and his BA at the University of Redlands. So let's welcome Scott and his panelists to the stage. Scott?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for sticking around. I'm really excited about this panel because we have people who are deploying this technology all around the technology we've been talking about today, all around the country. And so we're going to dig in. We actually had slides, and then we decided we weren't going to go with slides. So I'm going to start out with a shameless plug for the ACES Mobility Coalition. So the ACES Mobility Coalition was founded almost a year ago by a number of technology leaders that wanted to have a common voice as we tried to advance this segment of the autonomous vehicle market. And when I talk about this segment, I'm talking about first and last mile, shared use, electric, autonomous, and connected vehicles. These are not high-speed robo-taxis or commercial vehicles. These are really this is a certain segment of the market, and we're laser focused on that segment of the market. We have four primary focus areas. One is to help NHTSA do its job, and we're doing that by working with NHTSA and DOT and working with the Hill. We also are very laser focused around workforce development. You've heard the challenges that folks are facing with respect to workforce development. And so we work with labor, and we work with a number of universities who are members to try to advance that workforce development issue. We're also focused around equity. I mean, one of the things that's so interesting and so important about what JTA has been talking about is the ability to use this technology to go into communities that have previously been disconnected from transit. And if you can bring people to transit, you can bring them to jobs and economic viability. And you can't do that necessarily with 40-foot or 60-foot buses. That's not a solution. And then sustainability. We're focused on taking people out of cars and putting them into shared use vehicles. So those are the core elements. And if you want to be part of the discussion, we're recognized, very quickly as kind of the voice for this segment of the technology. So if you want to be part of the conversation, you want to shape where this technology is going, I urge you to come and talk to me about joining. We're a public sector-led organization and have public sector ethos, but we're fully dedicated to making sure that this becomes a reality. So that's, and now what I'm going to ask is each of the speakers to tell you who they are, what their organization does, and then also what the most interesting dish that they've had this year has been. I'm going to start with Joe Moy, the CEO of Beep.
Most interesting dish I've had. I'm going to start with that one.
Okay.
So I've been taking this one of these wonder drugs that helps in weight control, trying to extend my life.
You look great, by the way.
Thank you, appreciate that. And so last Saturday I was out running errands and tackling a few things I hadn't gotten to, and I have to say, for the first time in 6 months, I had this hankering for a Five Guys. So it wasn't a steak, it wasn't a lobster. Pulled into Five Guys at 2:30 in the afternoon, and that was the most incredible meal I've had in a decade. So there's my story.
Okay, so now tell us who you are and
so,
tell us a little bit about Beep.
So I bought a Five Guys franchise, and now I'm in the restaurant business. Now, Joe Moy, the CEO of Beep, kudos to all the presenters and speakers and attendees here. Beep specializes in the deployment and the service layer associated with safely and effectively deploying shared autonomous platforms in first mile, last mile use cases. You've heard a lot about that today, and if it's not obvious, it should become obvious that, you know, in all the billions and billions of dollars that have gone into autonomous technologies and platforms, the reality of it is it's going to be proven out in use cases that are represented in controlled speed environments, geo-fenced areas, safer deployments, delivering a really meaningful impact as it relates to providing extended mobility and accessibility. So our company focuses on supporting those use cases with the service layer and the technology that enables those effective deployments. We've been doing that for 6 years now, based in Orlando, Florida, and are proud partners here of the U2C team. The last shameless plug I'll share at a personal level, since you took my slide away, is I'm a native of Jacksonville. Grew up here, I was trying to count, I think, 47 family members that live in the Jacksonville area now. I actually graduated high school with our mayor here in Jacksonville in 1979. Bishop Kenny, go Crusaders. So it's been a really interesting journey when we founded Beep 6 years ago to see my hometown really being one of the leaders out there, representing the city and the opportunity and this innovation on the global stage. And I see the participants that are here today. And, you know, to the JTA team, I personally thank you for your vision. As a hometown kid, I couldn't be more proud and excited to be part of this program. And then I'd also say, JTA has been a bit of a beacon out there for us in the industry. But as you'll hear, the work that's going on in Houston and Altamont Springs and North Carolina and Georgia and Clearwater, cities and states around our country that are out on the front of this wave with us, proving out the use of these technologies, really, you know, transforming mobility as we know it, but in very impactful use cases. So I applaud all of our public transit and private transit partners that are really the ones that are kind of driving this to where it's going to become a reality here in very short order. So appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Joe. Our next person who's going to give their introduction is Kimberly Williams, who's the Chief Innovation Officer for Houston Metro, which is, I think you said, the 11th largest transit operator in the United States right
Correct.
now? And you're operating everything from buses to BRT to light rail and to autonomous vehicle, paratransit. So please.
Appreciate it, Scott. Joe, thank you so much. I just first want to commend the Jacksonville team. You know, Mr. Ford and Greer and Kit are doing amazing work, and as Joe already mentioned, is a motto that all of us look toward when we're looking at this technology. So again, I'm Kim Williams. I bring greetings from Texas. Don't hold it against me. But we are excited to be here today. And just to share a little bit about the Houston journey. And so a lot of people ask, well, what does the Office of Innovation do at Houston Metro? We are charged with future-proofing the assets of the agency and looking at how technology can be used to better the travel experience for our customers. And so autonomous vehicles plays a big part of that. I know there's a lot of conversation today about the technology, but our focus has been on the people. And when you have a region, Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States, and it is the largest city in the state of Texas. No, it is not Dallas, it is Houston. And so we have a lot of people to move over 1,300 square miles, and we're continuing to grow. We're one of the fastest growing cities and counties in the United States. And so that really takes everything in the toolbox. You can't just look at one type of technology, and you can't use 20th century technology to solve 21st century problems. And this is where autonomous solutions really come to play. And someone mentioned it earlier, really automation is about in everything that we do, so it just makes sense to start doing it here. We have 2 projects that we're very proud of. We are in the operational space. We have what we call phase 1 of our University District project, which is a first and last mile community connector. in our area that has 2 universities, historically Black University College, Texas Southern University, and then the University of Houston, which is a, not a Big 10, Big 12, getting my sport analogies right, don't hold it against me, that moves about 50,000 people through that corridor regularly every day. And so we saw that as a great opportunity because it's not just the 2 universities, but it's also one of the city's most underserved communities. A lot of you are familiar with George Floyd. That's where he grew up, where he was raised. That community also has the largest public housing facility in the state of Texas. So there is a mix of people who need service, and this is where we see that solution most suited for. We were very fortunate to start service and have a great experience. We had to conclude the first phase due to the pandemic and the university's closing, but we are excited to be partners with the Federal Transit Administration, who funded phase 2 of our program, which we call FutureLink, because we definitely see this as linking the future to our community, to jobs, to education, to recreation. And so that project will be coming and operating in Houston before the end of the year, and we're excited about that and to see where this grows. So I want to again thank the JTA team for hosting us today for these amazing demonstrations, and we're looking forward to being a part of the continuing conversation. Thank you.
Favorite dish?
Favorite dish. So I'm originally from Detroit, which a lot of people don't know has a huge Greek population, and we even have a Greek town. So if you go there, you go through Greektown, we have these amazing restaurants. But I was actually at a conference in the San Francisco area, and there was a group of us who met the night before the conference and went to a Greek restaurant right near the airport. And we ordered this amazing dish. It was all your Greek food favorites, but it was on fire. Like, they brought the thing out, it's like flaming, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? And so they set it down at the table, and so basically they start cooking it in the kitchen, but then they, flambe it, and then it comes to you, and it continues to cook on the table, and then it's just amazing. And all, lamb chops, everything, it was just an amazing dish. So that was my most exciting dish this year, for sure.
Thank you.
Wow.
So the next panelist is Frank Martz, who's the city manager for the city of Altamont Springs. And I will say, after having known Frank now for probably, 6 months, 9 months, you are the most progressive local city manager I've ever met.
Wow, thank you.
You're here.
That's a drop the mic moment, right?
Yeah, you should just go sit down now.
Yeah, no kidding.
It doesn't get better
It
than
only
that.
gets worse now that I open my mouth. So I'll start. My name is Frank Martz. I'm very proud to be an ACES board member as well with these great people, and really appreciate Mr. Ford, Greer, and everyone here at JTA. I'm going to start with the coolest thing I've had is a Colombian fruit called guanabana, if you've ever had that. I've never had it before. It's the ugliest fruit on the outside and really great on the inside. I had no idea what I was about to eat. Wasn't on fire. It just looked ugly. And so that was the coolest thing that I had, and share that with you. But my name is Frank Martz. I'm the city manager for the city of Altamont Springs, Florida. We're about 12 miles north of Orlando, and very few people know where we are. We're on the stage. I'm on the stage with Houston and in Jacksonville, and I'm proud to tell you that we're not even the largest city in our county, but we're pretty nimble. Our history, I'll tell you a little bit about us because few people know. We're a city of about 47,000 people. We have 431 full-time employees. We have 515 volunteers. 515 people work for us every day for free because they love the culture that we have in our city. It is about ideas. It's not about politics or race, it's about ideas. And we empower people to think and try. Very proud of our culture. We haven't raised our taxes in 9 years. We're completely debt-free. We run like a business. Only 15% of our revenue comes from property taxes of any kind. So that philosophy that we have had has enabled us to play in the future of not just transit and transportation, but really in community and sustainability. And I'll tell you just a little bit. If you're familiar with Sunrail in Central Florida, it's our commuter rail authority that was founded by the city of Altamont Springs. We wrote the statutory enabling language that created it. In fact, my conference room at the City Hall was the first office for the Commuter Rail Authority. And we learned a lot about size. We were really small, so it got taken away from us. And it became regional, of all things, can you imagine? And we started to pivot because we have 95 million people who come through our city every single day. And the challenge is, how do you make a community sustainable that has that much regional traffic? So about 30 years ago, we started changing our land use plans. I mean, it really is about people and land use. And we built our land use plans. I think that is one of the things that you heard a little earlier. You don't build transit in response to what has happened. You build transit to shape what happens. And that's really important. And so we have been innovating in the transit space because we are preparing for the land use. And I don't know what's called, what, T21? Was that what next? T21.
Yeah.
25 years ago, I wrote an algorithm for demand response bus rapid transit. So it was taking a bus and putting all of the stuff on it, CAD, AVL, and we did an R&D project for the FTA and FHWA and the FDOT to do a proof of concept that you could do demand responsive BRT, get it out of a lane, puncture neighborhoods, and still maintain headways and ridership demand expectations. And it worked. And then we learned another lesson. It worked so good that it got taken away from us. So when it got taken away, I was sitting beside a congressman, some of you may know John Mica, and when the FTA said, you know, it's not your project anymore, we gave it to somebody else, we reached out and became the first community in the world to partner with Uber. The next level of thought, because to us, it's not about the technology, it's about time. Mother Nature and Father Time are undefeated. So if you can find a way to make lives more convenient, to take burdens off of people, to give them back some of their time, that's what we were focused on. And Uber launched in our city. They had been doing first mile, last mile. They'd been doing drunk driver, safe ride home. They had never deployed in a whole community. And it became the basis for a change of law in Florida that allowed TNCs to proliferate. And then in 2017 or 18, we started to pivot towards autonomous vehicle deployments. We started staging it up. We were ready to go, and then COVID hit, and everything changed. And we have, most recently, we have deployed. We're not planning AV. We are on the ground. We're running in public streets, through private properties. And we are in the process of planning out our 4th and 5th phases of our first deployment. We're going to deploy another one. Beep is our operator. And I think one of the most important things I guess I'll share with you about Altamont is being nimble is important. And some of the challenges that bigger cities have, smaller cities don't have. And you know, there's a battle group, if you think about this type of deployment. JTA, Houston, they are aircraft carriers. They are moving the ocean. We're smaller vessels beside it. And it takes all of us. There are 10 or 15 Houstons and Jacksonvilles. There are 1,500 Altamont Springs. And our deployment of autonomous vehicles is funded with the state of Florida. And part of the covenant is that we produce a lessons learned for other cities. This is small cities. This is how you do it. And we're learning the lessons that JTA is learning, that Houston is learning, that other communities are learning, sharing what we've learned, because we all encounter some of the same problems. Because we are in the making lives better business. We're not in the business of tech. We're in the business of making lives better. And I'm really proud of our city for doing that.
Thank you, Frank. So my favorite dish I had this year was I was traveling down.
We didn't ask you that.
I know, but I wanted to tell it. That's why I asked the question. I was driving down I-40 cross country, and I don't know if any of you go to the truck stops, but a lot of the truck stops are now Indian restaurants, and really fine Indian restaurants. And I had the best cup of masala chai that I've ever had with all of the Sikh bus drivers or truck drivers. So I guess let me start with you, Joe. You are a technology provider. In fact, you're a serial entrepreneur. You're part of a fund. You've been involved in, I know you've been the CEO of at least 3 companies. And you're not you didn't start out in transportation. You guys Beep came to this because they saw a need. And over the last 6 years, you've had over 50 deployments across the country. I guess what my question for you is, what are some of the lessons that you've learned in trying to deploy technology in the public sector?
Yeah, so thank you for those kind words, by the way. I mean, that was nice. My
They're
mother
heartfelt.
would be proud.
Good.
No, it's, you know, I mean, first and foremost, as I commented on a couple of minutes ago, you know, the public sector, public transit, municipalities have been really driving this innovation from the onset because they see the impact it can have in expanding services to our citizens. And frankly, some of the gaps we have, whether that's, you know, the fact that 50% of our public can't easily access public transit today, don't have a convenient means to make that initial connection, hence the first mile, last mile arterial connectivity that we focus on. And so I think the passion that public transit in particular has brought to the needs and the gaps that we have in this area of connectivity, especially in urban areas, has been a big driver to what we do as technologists, and I think a big enabler to how we've been able to test and advance these programs. You know, just to give a dig to my public sector brethren, the procurement process is absolutely painful. You know, but it says a lot about these organizations that they've been able to push the envelope on a new technology, get out in front of this, test this in public road deployments, as have been discussed, and then really drive a sea change that's happening in all areas of this industry. You know, it's not just our local transit authorities and partners, it's the federal government that funds a large percentage of public transit across our country. How do you get them engaged to be part of the solution and not part of the problem? You know, we may have some time to discuss some of the regulatory challenges, but it is not for the faint of heart what has to be done to pull that whole ecosystem together to be able to ultimately commercialize this service as we're getting ready, you know, to see in Jacksonville and elsewhere. So, you know, I would say, I think as far as the challenges we have, it's really the enormity of getting the regulatory, the legislative, and then the local bodies aligned on, you know, what is going to be required for the U.S. to have a leadership position in this area. And, you know, Mr. Ford and I were in D.C. on Tuesday of this week to show, you know, a good example of how we're doing this together as a public-private partnership and pulling all of that together to make these platforms a reality.
So, just a quick follow-up question. So, as a technologist, should the public sector be the sharp point of the stick in this space?
I don't know what the hell that means, Scott.
I think it means being out there in front and taking the kinds of risks that entrepreneurs take.
Yeah, and you know, that's actually a really, sorry to pick on you, but that was a really great point after you defined it for me.
Explained it to you.
But no, and I think that's a really important point. You know, unless you work closely with the public sector, you know, what's the stereotype? Oh, the old, stodgy, slow-moving organizations. You know, there's some merit behind that in pockets. But this is a great example, and us coming out of the technology field and into the transportation field, we have learned so much about how, you know, our public transit and public sector partners are using the legacy experiences to move this whole industry forward. So in an interesting way, and I think you've heard it today, and I love the idea of us all being co-founders. I mean, the entrepreneurial spirit that I see on these programs and, you know, the art of the possible and the what if and how do we move this safer but faster and more impactfully. It's really been a great learning experience for myself personally, not being in the transportation sector. And I would say the coming together of all of those pieces is really why we're sitting here today.
Okay. So Kim, you were blessed with having one of the most progressive CEOs in the country.
Right.
I mean, Tom Lambert is really recognized universally as being innovative and willing to take chances, and he did amazing things in the city of Houston.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's been easy, and I know your two projects you have had their fits and starts. Can you just describe some of the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. And on behalf of Ms. Lambert, who's not here, I'll accept those compliments. You know, there were several lessons that we learned, and we were very intentional when we started our project to start with the community and meeting with them and understanding what their needs were. But I would say internally, to Joe's point about the internal structure, I actually come out of procurement. And so I understand how they think and how they work and why they work the way they do. So I think the best advice that I would give to someone who's pursuing this project, whether it's this type of innovation or another, is to develop your partnerships internally early. So if that's procurement, if that's legal, and risk, you know, those are the three groups. And now increasingly safety, because since we've been doing this work, the Federal Transit Administration has developed the safety management programs that all agencies now have to do. So that's a new element that has come into the AV deployment conversation that wasn't there when we started 7 years ago, right? So one of the biggest hurdles to getting people to move faster is a lack of understanding. And so I think once you make those partnerships internally with those key partners and educate them, opportunities like this where they get to see the technology, they get to see examples of it working effectively and safely, the more comfortable they get and it's easier to work with. And so we've developed those relationships, we developed the templates, we've done the education, and then once you have your internal team, we then go out to the public. And it is a lot of bringing the people along. Us in this room, we're super excited about this technology. We know what it can do, we know its capabilities and its capacities. But unfortunately, the typical user is watching the news and they hear about our private sector counterparts like a Tesla crash, you know, or maybe an earlier startup deployment that, you know, resulted in an incident. And that is what the media jumps on, and that's what stays in their mind. So unfortunately, we have to do twice as much to overcome some of that, to show them that it is safe, it is viable. And I want to echo what Mr. Ford said earlier of appreciating people for being those trailblazers, because it's allowed us to show the public an alternative view of how successful and effective these projects can be. If it's Joe's projects or Houston or Altamont Springs, like this works and it works well and it works safely. And I think as far as lessons learned, it's very important to over-explain, to over-communicate that to counteract some of the other things that stakeholders and the community might hear.
Thank you. Frank, what the F? I didn't.
Am I supposed to fill in the blank?
Now you're supposed to respond. No, so tell me.
What the flowers, like.
Yeah.
You're not even the biggest city in your county. I mean, you're a mid-sized city, and you're deploying. You've got 3 shuttles. You're about to go to 6 or 8, then you're going to go to 20 throughout your community. Is this an engineer's passion project? I mean, are you doing this because you really think technology is cool and you want to prove it out? Why are you doing this? Because you're taking so much risk in doing this. I'm really curious what drives you to take that risk.
So I think, well, I think there are a lot of answers to that question, and each day there's another reason why. So some of it is how I grew up. I grew up outside of DC in a pretty much forgotten part of a little city that was where post-Civil War slaves, German immigrants, and Jewish immigrants were all stacked together and then forgot about it. And I think from that, really what grew inside of me was a desire to make an impact in some way. And I use earlier when you saw a lot of similes and metaphors on screen, but I really believe in leaving a footprint on the beach. Other people are going to follow you, and you have to have courage. I speak a lot about organizational structures and innovation organizations, and it's all about courage. And for me, and for our organization, we try to find the best in people, not always the best people, but the best in people, not just in our community, but also on our staff. And when you see someone's reaction to something cool you've done, and I'll give you a few examples, and then I'll come back to transit. All of you know what reclaimed water is, yeah? Okay, there was a time that the city of Altamont Springs was the only dual water wastewater facility in the southeast United States, because we knew one day this thing called clean water was going to be an issue. And we decided that we would figure out how to solve that. And we are an R&D site for the state. We've got 10 fully funded FDOT projects. We have water management district projects, DEP projects, and those projects produced innovation. One of those was we turned reclaimed water into drinking water without reverse osmosis. There's no hazmat material. The carbon footprint is neutral. It does not require the electric that RO requires. And then we built a STEM program. And now we have kids walking through our program. We've had 20,000 public school students walking through our innovation projects, touching this stuff. And they are taking that innovation home and teaching their parents. They're going home and saying, hey, this thing called Uber, this is pretty cool. When we were doing the rollout with Uber, people were coming in, this is the Uber. I spoke at the TRB, said, how many of y'all were told, don't get in the car with strangers? And now we're telling our kids to get in the car with strangers. So tying it back to transit, it's about making an effing impact. Not long ago, Brandon and Bree, who are here from BEAT, we hosted a group from a retirement home in ALF. And they read about it in the paper, and they wanted to, our magazine, they wanted to see what it was. And this gentleman named Lloyd was 99 years old. And he said, I never thought I'd see anything like this in my lifetime. And he got on the vehicle. I think Brandon or Bree were probably on with him. When he got back, and he was on a walker, needed a wheelchair. I mean, all the ADA things that we asked BEAT to produce, that BEAT, who cares about making an impact, they produce and deploy. This 99-year-old man gets off this vehicle and says, I have arrived. And now, because he's familiar with it, he can participate in the economy. He can get out and be with people again. And when you see that kind of impact, and you see all of our great employees embracing that, willingness to make change, having that courage, that's why we effing do it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Kim, so I know when you went through your procurements, you wrestled with form factor. Mm-hmm. And that's a continual debate that goes on throughout the industry. Right. We have Holon here, which is will be manufacturing in the United States in 2026. These really beautiful vehicles that were purpose-built. But there are a lot of places in the country that want to be involved in autonomy, and they don't have access to that, or they have a different viewpoint, and that's with vehicles that are FMVSS compliant and then have been adapted. And that's the route you ended up taking. How did you end up down that route, and what was your thought process behind that?
No, that's a great question, and we did spend a lot of time. So it was always envisioned that we would operate our project in phases. And as I mentioned, our goal was to bring the community along. And so the first phase was a purpose-built vehicle out of France that we had what they call a Box 7 waiver from the federal government to operate. And we did that. The response and interaction from the community was overwhelmingly positive. And so we knew that this was something that was viable for us, but we had to be realistic about how do we make this a true transit service. And if anyone in here are transit operators, we live under a lot of rules, laws, and regulations. The whole vehicle is gorgeous, I mean, without a doubt. And when people see it, they, there's an automatic attraction to it because it's a new, shiny, innovative object. But for us and what we needed to do to keep the momentum and to really look at scaling, the one thing we had a lot of were diesel fuel vehicles. And these vehicles could be converted to electric, and then these vehicles could be converted to autonomy. So we knew we would get to this point where we would be doing the purpose-built while the purpose-built community goes through the regulatory requirements process. But in order to keep momentum going, we said, let's use what we have. And so we opted to go with a known transit vehicle. It's a Phoenix motor car platform. It's built on the Ford E450 chassis. And we were fortunate to have a great autonomy partner in Perron Robotics. I see Nick in the back, who was able to, Phoenix was first able to electrify that based a diesel vehicle, and then Perron was able to come in and put in its patented Tony kit. And that was able to get our internal staff excited because this was a vehicle they could relate to. Your current transit employee may not relate to that vehicle. They don't know how to operate it. They don't know how to maintain it or fix it. They may not even know how to clean it. Like, what can I use on this or not? So there was a little bit of a disconnect even on the workforce side. But once we brought in the Phoenix vehicle, like our operations people jumped on it. They were like, this is something we know. This is something we can relate to. And on the community engagement side, whereas I'm excited to jump on this, our more traditional ridership was like, well, I know this vehicle. It looks like the vehicle I normally would take. It looks like my paratransit vehicle or my community connector vehicle. So all around the way, it was a win. It helped to keep the conversation going and help us continue to scale. Eventually, we will get there, without a doubt. But in the interim, we don't lose any momentum in carrying the AV conversation forward when we're using the retrofit type vehicle. So that was the thought process, that was the analysis. And I'll be honest as well, we talked about procurement. It's easier to procure. Your procurement department is already familiar with the vehicle, and they know how to bring that vehicle into your agency much easier. And so it just made sense for us. And we think it will make sense for a lot of agencies, whether you're Houston or a smaller city, to start with, right? To put your toe in the water, to jump in that space. You may not go from your traditional transit vehicle all the way to this type of vehicle right away. Right. But it creates another pathway, that intermediate pathway for agencies to use to, again, keep the conversation going.
Great. So, Joe, you and Kim were both two of the original founding members of ACES Coalition, as well as JTA, RTC Southern Nevada, and Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And can you each talk a little bit about why you got together to create this coalition? Because there are a lot of autonomous vehicle coalitions out there. Why would you create a new one?
Yeah, and I'll start and then let Kim and the others chime in. I think, first and foremost, if you know anything about the trade associations and groups that are out there lobbying for regulatory and legislative change in this space, they're very much focused on everything autonomous, from shipping to package delivery to trucking to vehicles. It's a wide swath approach that they're taking, and I'm not criticizing them because they're doing important work, but the unique use cases that are represented in shared mobility, the movement of people, require a very different approach to our regulatory and legislative actions that have to happen for these vehicles to be deployed more broadly. And so the whole premise behind this wasn't, you know, vendor specific or technology specific or you know, transportation partner specific. It was all about the use case of moving people, solving for microtransit gaps, and realizing, and I think this is going to play out in some pretty exciting things that are on the horizon in the next number of months coming out of both DOT and out of the legislature. There's no chance I can finish in 5 minutes.
Five-ish.
You know, but you know what I hit on before I think is really important is, you know, I believe very strongly as a technologist, and now, you know, I won't even put myself in the transportation expert bucket. A transportation learner or student is this technology is going to be proven out in controlled environments. And controlled environments doesn't mean go from here to there 100 yards. Very sophisticated mobility networks and services can be deployed. But if they're on planned routes, if they're in known environments, if they're at controlled speeds, you know, that technology is available to us today, and it's delivering the meaningful movement of people and starting to solve for some of these microtransit deserts that we've got out there across our country. So, you know, that whole premise behind ACES was we need to come at this not from a raw technology perspective, but from a use case perspective. How do we solve for, you know, the fact that a large percentage of our elderly population doesn't have a convenient means of transportation? I think Frank said it great, to participate in the economy, to access health services, to improve their quality of life. I mean, this is the passion that, you know, our public transit partners have. What drives them, technology is a piece of it, but what drives them is the missions that they're serving to connect people and goods and services across our communities. And that's really what I think, as I look at ACES and what we're trying to solve for, that's why we felt we needed kind of this very unique focus on those specific examples of you know, transportation in that microtransit arena.
Kim?
I think our interest in joining ACES and why we were glad that it was formed is because we talked about it, procurement, and we need to see competition in this space. We need to see more vendors doing this work. I think the more vendors that we have, the more that we can satisfy the different use cases that we have, whether you're a small agency or a big agency. And so we felt like we were having a lot of momentum, but that the vendors were struggling because of the regulatory environment. And so we wanted to be a part of that solution. And ACES gave us a way to not just lament like, oh, well, you know, hopefully they'll make it, or hopefully, you know, this will thrive, but to really be a part of helping that community grow. And I think that's important as we move to this space. It is happening. And I think the more vendors we have, even we talk about being competitive as a country, we need to be in this conversation, and we need to be able to let the private sector know what we need in the public sector so that they can serve those needs.
And, Frank, why did you end up ultimately joining?
Well, you know, the future's here. I have 3 kids, I have 3 grandchildren, and organizations that are helping legislators and policymakers decide how to shape policy. And in those things, what we've learned as a little city, after having 2 innovation projects taken away from us, you're either part of the solution, or you are the very tip of a tail that's being wagged by somebody else. So we've helped write a lot of legislation in Florida for mobility and transportation. And the ACES mission is exactly aligned with where we are. We want automation, we want connections, we want to use electric, and we want it to be shared and safe. So we believe in autonomous vehicle as autonomy as a technology. So we wanted to lend our voice as a local government, because we are small, nimble, and different. We wanted to help shape that policy that included everybody, and that's why we joined.
All right, we're getting the hook, but I'm going to take a little bit of leeway because I don't really like to follow rules. So I'm going to ask one last question of each of you, and then this will be wrapping it up. I'm sure you can I have your permission, Mr. Ford? All right. So one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now, especially in the public sector, has to do with workforce and has to do with labor. So Kim, why don't you start and talk about how you're facing that issue and how this broader group can help you and help us deal with that.
No, absolutely. It is a major concern. I mean, there have been dedicated operators who make our projects work, and we have been in communication and working with them side by side. So in our union contract, we have what's called an innovation clause, and basically in that we have a commitment to each other to talk to each other when we deploy new innovative technology, whether it's autonomous vehicles or anything else. And so that has really facilitated a lot of the work. I mentioned that we've had 2 projects. The first one was a turnkey done by a third-party operator. Our operations team had very little involvement in that project, but our second one, the one that we're developing now, has been in lockstep with our operations group, and we have brought them into the conversation. One thing I would say to those in this room in terms of how you can help, I think we need to be more detailed about exactly what the opportunity is. What I hear from our union is that, yeah, you guys say things like, oh, it's gonna bring jobs. Well, what job? What training do I need for this job? What do I need to do to get that job? What is the pay for that job? And so I think we have operated these projects long enough to be able to start answering those questions in a very detailed and defined way, because it's gonna bring jobs is not enough. So I'll say that. Just one quick point of personal privilege, I forgot to mention my other partner, Suzanne Murtha with AECOM, who's also a big part of both of our AV projects. Sorry about that, Suzanne. Thank you.
And Susan runs the Autonomous Bus Coalition, another
Yes.
important coalition in the industry. Frank, what about you from a workforce?
Yeah,
30
well,
seconds.
you know, you can't induce mode switch unless the mode is reliable. So there's got to be people that, I just mean from a very basic level, there have to be people that are going to keep these vehicles safe, operational, on the road, and that is going to build, you know, an adoption confidence. That's going to be part of why we are able to get people out of single occupant vehicles and into the transit world of any type of technology. But I think from a workforce development standpoint, and what everyone in this room can do is recognize that the technology, the software, the hardware, the chassis, the battery, all of those types of all of those things that are on transit vehicles also have a life in lots of other types of technology. So this workforce development around AV is really workforce transition globally. Our children, my grandchildren, are not going to live in a world where I grew up with catalytic converters, and the entire world said, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen when we can't use leaded gas? So the world's changing. I think the workforce development space around autonomous vehicles is really a service opportunity for lots of different types of technology. And everybody in this room has gotten something this week that was delivered to them, and it touched an autonomous piece of machinery. So if you've taken ourselves out of the transit space and just thought, it's the future. So let's start teaching kids about the future.
All right, Joe, you have anything you want to add?
I mean, these teams are doing incredible work around workforce development, training our workforce of the future. You know, we held a STEM activity here at the Florida State College of Jacksonville last year, and it was interesting. My team, who I'm staring at now, and I'll bring up on stage, just kidding, you know, I mean, one of the biggest takeaways was the level of interest in what this technology represented with 5th graders. You know, their interest in learning more about it, and how was that going to improve their lives, and how do they get into this area of technology. I mean, just seeing those experiences that are happening out there. And then the last thing I'll say, because I know we need to go, they've got like wrap signs on both sides of the room. It's like I can't look anywhere and avoid it. You know, the last thing I'll say is it is absolutely not accurate that this technology is going to eliminate jobs.
Yeah.
You know, we have 40 vehicles under management. We have over 130 employees in the company. That's not job elimination just by simple math. And I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but it is an education. People need to understand that you deploy these types of platforms, they're going to re-enable and re-engage public transit. We're still 20% down on usage pre-COVID in public transit across the country. This is going to reactivate public transit, create those extended routes, the long-haul routes that are typically represented in bus-type scenarios. So I think that's a really important education process that we just have to continue to push, which is this is incremental, this is incremental, this isn't takeaway as it relates to jobs and opportunities.
All right. Well, please join me in thanking the panel. You guys are great. Good job.
You are.
Great job. Oh, we have to take a picture. Great job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Of course. All right. Good job.
Great panel, everyone. Thank you very much to Scott and to the ACES Mobility Coalition. You already got started. We're going to take a 10-minute networking break, and then we'll resume for our last and final panel for today. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get started with our final panel discussion of the day. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our final panel discussion for the day, building an autonomous infrastructure. Over the next 60 minutes, we will hear from speakers who will discuss the key infrastructure required for autonomous vehicle implementation. Our moderator for this session is Mr. Darnell Smith. In December 2023, City of Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan appointed Mr. Smith to serve as her Chief of Staff, tapping into his leadership skills to maximize this transformational moment for our city. He officially joined her administration as an executive on loan for Florida Blue in January 2024. Prior to this role, Mr. Smith served as Florida Blue's market president for the North Florida region. In this role, Mr. Smith was responsible for Florida Blue's business market growth, as well as Customer and Community USA Policy Council, and serving as chair of the JAX USA Policy Council, and serving as chair of the JAX Chamber Board of Directors in 2017. Darnell Smith holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Florida State University, a graduate of the Advanced Management Program at Harvard Business School, the Advanced HR Executive Program at the University of Michigan, and is a very active member in Leadership Jacksonville and Leadership Florida. Before I welcome Mr. Darnell Smith to the stage, our Chief of Staff for the City of Jacksonville, I just want to give one more request for everyone to please return to the audience so that we can truly begin this final program. It's going to be an exciting program with some innovative speakers to tell us what they're doing in the space of delivering infrastructure, autonomous vehicle infrastructure, to not only this community, but communities across the country. So I want to make sure we have your full, undivided attention. Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to the stage Mr. Darnell Smith.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right, let's bring it home. Of course, happy to be here and welcome to the second speaker series of the day. As you heard, my name is Darnell Smith, and I am honored to be here today. I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Chief of Staff for our first female mayor of the City of Jacksonville. And Donna Deegan is, of course, keen on bringing innovation to the City of Jacksonville. You may have had a chance to hear her a little bit earlier this week. Hopefully you heard her commitment to making certain that we are absolutely on the cutting edge, the innovative edge of this great work. As a market president for North Florida, when I'm not in this particular job, because as you heard, I'm also on loan, at least for the next 7 months, I typically see how innovation is particularly important from a transportation standpoint as a direct benefit to those seeking health care. I've spent 34 years in the healthcare business, so I understand keenly exactly how much this means and how innovation is the cutting edge of even healthcare in that regard. So if we're really impacting our region for good, innovation is the key to doing so. Thus, I am excited to serve as a moderator for this session, Building an Autonomous Infrastructure. We will hear from the speakers as they share their case studies on the required infrastructure needed to deploy autonomous vehicle services in their communities, and certainly as we think about it here in Jacksonville. Each speaker will present for 10 minutes. After all the presentations are completed, we will invite the speakers back to the stage and then enter a Q&A session with you, the audience. So without further ado, let's get started. Our first speaker is Kevin Wishnott, Senior Project Manager with Balfour Beatty. Kevin, please come to the podium, and we look forward to hearing from you about your work on the Bay Street Innovation Corridor.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I thought I'd start just a basic question: what is infrastructure? Lost. Okay.
There you go.
I've been told I'm stealth on microphones, so not a surprise. So the basic question is, what is infrastructure? That is such a broad discussion topic. So when you say building an autonomous infrastructure, we could spend days, weeks, months discussing it. But essentially, it's your basis or your foundation for what we're doing, our operating system. In terms of civil engineering, infrastructure for autonomous vehicles is basically relying on a lot of what we already do. So the same infrastructure that carries the vehicles today carries autonomous vehicles. So the roads, the bridges, and various ways of moving traffic is not changed. Future opportunities will change. And what I mean by that is design can evolve to meet the needs of people, just as infrastructure design evolves to meet the needs of people. Personal example, and this is going back about 30 years ago, a good friend of mine was working on part 2 of an analysis on something called rumble strips. And for those who don't know what rumble strips are, they're basically the grooves or bumps put along the edge of the road. So if you go off the lane, you feel that bum 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 or that humming sound, and it tells you to come back onto a lane. The reason for it was because a lot of people were dying because they were driving exhausted. They would literally just slowly fade away and drive off the road into the woods. And the immediate effect was huge. Now, today's vehicles, you don't need them. They have systems that read the lines. The steering wheel will vibrate, some will beep, some won't even let you get over. But 30 years ago, it was a major life-saving thing. And the reason why I bring that one up is because, unfortunately, in my youth, working long hours, doing all sorts of things, I understood what the concept of the Braille driving method was, where you start fading and okay, time to find a rest area and take a break, because I'm obviously not ready to make it home, because you work all day, work into the night, and then go. And where I'm headed with all this is, with autonomous vehicles, a lot of the features specifically designed for people can actually scale back. Your design speeds could increase as technology improves. With fundamental things, something like rumble strips that would no longer be needed, these are things that cost less money because you don't have to pay for that, because you have that non-human driver that doesn't get fatigued, doesn't get distracted by cell phones, and continues from there. So your baseline from roadway conveyance has not changed. It's there. The future may reduce the needs and improve in terms of some economy of design. The next big one on the opposite extreme is intelligent transportation systems. And I know people following me are going to talk in great detail, so I'm just going to touch on it. When I started projects a long time ago, the whole electrical package was basically lighting. Then it evolved into, let's have some motorist information system. Then it turned into, let's have cameras for dynamic motorist information systems. Now I can say from my last project, almost a third of the project was intelligent transportation systems. And I see that trend growing. So the overall ITS cost is going up and up, and it's not just cost, it's all the stuff that's being employed as part of the work. The advantage of that is smarter roads makes for safer travels. And again, people will talk in detail, so I better pause on that, but the evolution of that is different. So when a lot of people go, okay, I built this road, or like my last DOT project, built this nice award-winning bridge, made the cover of the directory, everything looks great. Now I'm doing a heavy infrastructure ITS project. The vast majority of everything that we build, most people won't even recognize. Between all the smart sensors, the fiber work, camera systems, most people don't look at a traffic light beyond the light, but all that other stuff has value, and that's the technology improvements. So where some of the stuff is not as readily visible, its impact is huge. So I'm gonna let people talk specifically on that. Then you get logistics needs. For infrastructure, we could go into the whole gamut of infrastructure and logistics, but we've already had manufacturers and various folks talking, but just some of the fundamentals. You still gotta maintain vehicles, you still gotta do repairs, you still have to have the ability to charge or provide fuel source and go from there. And all that has to be planned accordingly. As the interstate road system developed, fuel points developed. Those fuel points are decreasing because the range of vehicles have gotten longer. Some of the newer technologies are bringing into charge as you go. So literally, the ranges are going to be extended more and more. Some of the excitement behind battery technology that's coming out, they're talking in terms of double the range for half the cost. That's what's on the horizon. And so it's very interesting to watch just how much it changes and how rapidly. And of course, all these facilities and development have to be built, so there's a big need for the infrastructure development there. And then just the basic logistics need of people. Because despite how much we do, people are going to get tired of sitting in a vehicle for that long. So even if you have a vehicle that can take you 24 hours to your destination in one shot, somebody's going to want to get up, move, use the facilities, etc. So it changes the dynamics around people planning and logistics. Because now it's no longer trying to plan your stop based on what your vehicle can do. You're planning your stops based on what you want to do or what you need. And that's opens up a whole new world in the TOD arena. So that's really the overview. And again, trying to keep it from a multi-day operation. That's what I've got. So thank you.
All right. Looks like I'm going to get them all up here. It's okay. Come on in. Come on in. All right, Kevin, thanks. Great job. Now let's hear from our next speaker. We have Ernest Saki, Group Leader of Traffic and Planning with Jacobs Engineering, as our next speaker. Mr. Saki will present case studies of connected automated vehicles. Mr. Saki, we welcome you to the podium.
Thank you. Yeah, well, speaking pretty loud. Oh, okay. Yeah, just want to talk a little bit about, I know most of the presenters are manufacturers and, operators of, autonomous vehicles. I come from the engineering side, from Jacobs Engineering. Just want to give you guys a little background on, some of the things that we do, the planning part, and then, actions that we take to help, our clients, DOTs to be able to deploy autonomous vehicles. We headquarters in Dallas, Texas, a pretty large company. We do a lot of things. I'm sure you guys, we've used Jacobs in different things throughout the years. We all know the benefits of autonomous vehicles. I don't really need to re-emphasize that, but the potential, from what the National Highways Transportation Safety Potential of reducing crashes by 80% when drivers are impaired. I mean, it's huge. And look at some of the challenges. Safety, safety, safety. That's why we are in this business. You know, as traffic engineers, we want to save lives. And you look at the fact that in 2017, over 39,000 people lost their lives in accidents. 39,000. Just think about that. So I want to talk about 3 case studies. The first one is Suntrax. Jacobs designed the infield for Suntrax. You know, we went through a lot of process, master planning, decide how to divide it and all of that to create a world-class testing facility. You guys earlier on saw the video showing all the cool things. So this is kind of giving you the background on how we created and designed a facility that is now open. The goal, of course, to be able to test you know, autonomous vehicles in a closed loop environment, you know, apply different things to it, you know, vibration, you know, rain, all the different things to be able to test the vehicles under those conditions to be able to see how they're going to react in the real world. And like I said, went through a master planning exercise, met with a lot of stakeholders. It included visits to other test facilities throughout the world in Europe, Germany, Poland, and different places to be able to gather the experience, lessons learned from their testing facilities to be able to deploy it at the Suntrax facility. One of the key things is, you know, we have different sectors. The facility allows you to test V2V, V2I, and V2X infrastructure. The biggest thing is flexibility. We design it with the thing in mind that this is technology. Technology changes. At the time we were doing the design, on-road dynamic wireless charging was not even available at that time. But because of the flexible design that we designed the facility, now you know, the facility now has the ability to test on-road dynamic wireless charging. This is, you know, the area of the now completely built facility that we designed. It helped FDOT and FTE on that. And like I said, flexible design, communication all over the place, making sure that it is secured, it's segregated. You can have multiple agencies testing your, your vehicles there at the same time, right, because it is segregated and physical and cybersecurity as well. I also want to talk about the Cumberland CID AV Shadow. I'm sure our friends from BIP can see that. We work with them along the way. But our goal, our role in helping the Cumberland CID was to, you know, do the ridership estimation, sweep alignment, develop concept of operations for the AV pilot, do the preliminary signing, and then also looking for funding opportunities to expand the program. The ridership analysis, I mean, if you've been to the Galleria area in Cobb County where the Braves play their game, you know, it is needed. I mean, the AV shuttle is needed. You get over 10 lanes of traffic. You have people crossing from one side just to go to a baseball game. It is crazy. So if you go there, you understand the needs, you know, why an AV shuttle is very much, you know, needed in such an area. We did the analysis scenario with a Braves game and without a Braves game. Rider estimation, you know, 17 to 26%. At the same time, we also did what are called alignment analysis to be able to see what favorable alignment is going to be able to help people in the area. So there's the alignment summary. Yep, just want to skip through a little bit. So different alternatives that we looked at. And then finally, this is the one that is being used. And then finally, talk about some of our cool stuff that we've been doing in other parts of the world, using what we call streetlight data insight. This is applying integration of data analysis, using cutting-edge platform, machine learning, AI, to be able to analyze and see areas of need for a complete AV deployment. It identifies and prevents gaps in infrastructure, road safety, helps agencies plan, enhance transportation demand, it mitigate traffic disruptions and congestion. So this is using Streetlight data, which is a Jacobs subsidiary, and it's a proprietary data software that you're able to, in addition to your regular stuff, you're able to give you an in-depth analysis of what it's doing. An example of what we are doing in Abu Dhabi, using AI and machine learning to be able to craft what we call a blueprint for tomorrow's transportation. And I want to leave you with this nice video, if it's going to play. Let's see. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ernest.
Yep.
Our next speaker hails right here from Jacksonville, Florida, at Miller Electric. Craig Bowman is the Director of Technology for the Integrated Solutions Group. Miller Electric is also a part of the team building the Bay Street Innovation Corridor. Craig, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Forgive me, I brought notes because when they asked me to speak, I thought 10 minutes seemed like a long time, and then I started to put slides together, and I thought, wow, I'm gonna have to script this thing to stick to 10 minutes. So, I'm Craig Bowman, I'm the Director of Technology for Miller. We've been involved with the project for a couple of years, and I just wanna outline a few high-level planning steps for an autonomous vehicle project. Topics key for deploying autonomous vehicle projects. For starters, you need an operations facility. Something is necessary to store the vehicles securely, to charge them, to maintain them, to do the fleet maintenance. That's kind of a necessary step, whether it's a new facility or an existing facility. For us, the AIC building is a new facility, so we get to start from scratch and build it the way it needs to be built. Ideally, it's located in close proximity to the AV route. You want to have minimal amounts of energy dispensed getting to the route that's being serviced. So in the case of the AIC building, it's right downtown, 2 blocks from the route. So that's ideal. This facility should be secure because you want the vehicles to be secure. Overnight, when they're charging, when they're unattended, these are technology vehicles that could be subject to vandalism or hacking. So we want these to be in a secure facility, which is the case for the AIC building, which also is going to house cleaning facilities, charging facilities, command and control, and an opportunity for community engagement with Angie's, what are we calling it, the happy hour patio or something like that? No? So, planning for vehicle communications. We talked about earlier, I think Fabio mentioned in his communication using the public cellular networks, a private cellular network, or in this case, one of our speakers here today will talk about low orbit cellular satellite communications. Those are all options for communicating with vehicles. And then really for ultimate cybersecurity, and which was the case for this project, one of the really high level targets, we're deploying a private LTE network, or now that it's available, a private 5G network for this. We couldn't have done that without JEA's in-kind contribution of a fiber optic loop. That ring will run the entire autonomous vehicle loop. On that network, we'll put all of our network devices. It's a closed network, it's secure. Brandon will talk about cybersecurity objectives at some point, but that's really, having a completely closed network is really the best starting point from an architectural perspective. So that's vehicle communications. And then charging. Carrie mentioned it earlier, AVs or EVs. So we'll take a little deeper dive into charging in a second. And finally, really, the station stops or the service points represent kind of a vulnerability for the passengers. So we're going to highlight on safety and security. I think in the case of the U2C project, the project team will tell you that was one of the most challenging parts of the project, was identifying where the stations go, meeting all the requirements for the city. What are they going to look like? Are they visible? Where on the sidewalk are they going to be? It was just, there was a lot of effort put into getting that pinned down. So, EV charging, as Carrie said, EVs or AVs, or AVs or EVs, it's a big deal. It's a big planning point. For those of you who are not EV owners, there's level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging. Level 1 is the lowest power option. That's typically what you would find in your household network, you know, a 120 volt, 15 amp circuit. If you have an EV, you might have gotten that emergency charging kit that comes with the vehicle so you can plug it into that receptacle. That's lowest level charging. Level 3 is industrial power, 480 volt. That's the DC fast charging you see out in the wild for fast charging at shopping centers and along corridor routes, the focus of NEVI funding. Somewhere in the middle there is level 2. Level 2 is that 208, 240 volt, you know, it may be your, if you have an electric dryer range at home, that's that sweet spot. And that's really what we're designing for in a lot of facilities. These are charging times measured in hours. You know, DC fast charging is in minutes. You know, that level 1 might be in days. So in that sweet spot in the middle for charging times in hours, these vehicles are going to be parked overnight or for hours at a time. That's their opportunity to get their charge. So planning-wise, you know, how many vehicles are in a fleet? That's the tricky part of planning the EV charging scheme is understanding how many vehicles, how big are their batteries, how quickly do they need to charge, how do I keep them on the road in their planned scheduled route. So there's a lot of planning involved with understanding once you know how much energy you need to provide the vehicles, you need to know how fast. That helps you dictate the electrical service required for the building and for the EV charging hardware itself. So it's a big focus of design requirement. Another thing about EV charging, the chargers are not dumb receptacles. And it may sound silly, but really they are a technology product that provides energy to the vehicles. They communicate with the vehicles. They talk to the charge controller. The vehicle is talking to the charger to identify how much voltage and current it can accept, especially in the DC fast charging. That's really a technology product. Level 2 is a little simpler. Level 1 is super simple. But these technology products communicate with the software back end. So in the case of, there's a slide here for a software application called Synop. Synop can help with your route planning for fleet deployments in that it will talk wirelessly to the vehicles, to their telemetry systems to understand the state of charge for the vehicles on the fleet. So as your fleet is out and about during the day, it can understand the level of charge on each vehicle and what's required, how much energy needs to be dispensed to the vehicles during their charging sessions. So if you have multiple vehicles in your building, the Synop application, or in the case of Beep's operation platform, understands which vehicles need to be charged fastest to go back out on the route. And the software helps load balance how much energy is dispensed to the vehicles. And I'd be remiss not to mention wireless charging. I know it's a thing with phones and watches, but it's also a thing with vehicles. So in the futuristic concept of autonomous vehicles, to have true autonomy, you need not have somebody at the vehicle to plug it in to charge it. So there should be consideration for wireless charging at some point. I think that's a focus that manufacturers are starting to look at. But if that vehicle is truly autonomous and it goes to its charging spot, it parks over the inductive pad, it gets its EV charged without having to have a human plug it in. So power's a concern. In the case of the AIC building, we have power available from JTA there. It wasn't really a concern for that location in its downtown environment. But there's a possibility, well, especially if you have ESG objectives, alternative energy, renewables is an option. For the AIC building, we've got a 70 kW rooftop solar power plant plan for the facility. If our calculations are correct, this should offset around 100% of the overall power consumption of the building without the EV charging. So when you look at the operations of the building, that's a pretty big offset for a relatively small building. It's, the roof itself is designed not to have a lot of obstructions. We don't have a lot of rooftop air handling units or anything like that, so we can really cover the roof with solar. 70 kW, if you take the entire year's worth of energy generation, should be able to cover us for just the building operations. We're also deploying a microgrid, so the battery energy storage solution that connects to that microgrid will provide some level of autonomy for the facility. We're using that to replace the generator. So no standby generator, no diesel fuel storage on site. Incidentally, I guess when you guys were doing the site evaluation, there was a concern that there might have been an existing contamination on the site. So it's kind of nice to know that what we put in now is not going to have a source of diesel fuel that could be spilled. The battery energy storage solution could possibly support us in an island mode. If we're getting generation that we need from the solar panels, storing that energy in the battery solution we will be able to sustain a building when it's disconnected from the JEA grid. The motivation for the microgrid is also something called peak shaving. So we can switch to a time of day schedule for our utility rate, which allows us, it's got a peak and an off-peak rate. The peak rate during those times of day is when it's also most expensive. So we can take that building load during the day, shift it to the evening when it's better for JEA, and the time of day rates are lower. And that differential creates the ROI to help pay for the microgrid solution. So all in all, rooftop solar could have that 7 to 12-year ROI, 12-year being something if you require more structures, like a parking shade canopy or something like that. But when you stack on the microgrid controller and the battery energy storage solution, it's 15 plus years, depending on the utility rates and how much those may increase. And then vehicle communications, that's something that was mentioned earlier. I think Fabio touched on it with the private and public cellular networks. There's a private cellular network here at the test and learn facility. That's what Guident is using to communicate with their vehicle for the remote telemetry. For the U2C project, we are deploying a private cellular network. We'll make it 5G because that's what's going to be available. That's going to give us that super low latency and high bandwidth that we'll need to support the technology in the vehicle. So we'll be able to get that telemetry data off the vehicle in real time, but also be able to stream real-time video. So surveillance video from inside the vehicle, bringing that to the control room so there's real-time awareness of what's happening in the vehicle is important. And finally, the safety security piece. We're deploying a unified video management system or unified security management system that incorporates the video surveillance, the access control, the alarm management, the video intercom units, video analytics from the cameras themselves. All that information is kind of stitched together in a single pane of glass application. Beep is integrating with that to push and pull data, to pull video surveillance feeds from the cameras. So there's an integratable platform there that's going to be used to stitch together all that important information throughout the corridor. You know, if passengers don't feel safe using the transit operation, they're not going to use it. So there has to be a consideration for safety and security to make them want to use it or to compel them to use it, make them feel safe to do so. And then lastly, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has a program called Community Connect. This software application that we're using federates with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. It ties to the Real-Time Crime Center, so that will give them the ability to remote in and see real-time video or retrieve recorded video quickly for quicker response to events. Thank you.
Put that there. Awesome. Thanks, Craig. Our next speaker is Bill Page, Vice President of Sales North America at Novelsat, a leading provider of next-generation content connectivity solutions over satellite. Mr. Page, it's all yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I see some people probably went out to find the best meal that Scott and Joe are talking about, but just a little note to them. Mine is Mario's Restaurant on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, and the meal was veal parmesan. If you ever make it back to New York, go up to the Bronx and check it out. It's good. I'm approaching this from a little bit of a different angle. One, for those, so I learned everything about autonomous vehicles really today, and I want to thank everybody here, all the speakers, for just enlightening me to what is going on. So, a little bit of which one? Top one, right? Right, that one. Not working. My company is Novelsat Communications, and we are a manufacturer and a solutions provider for SATCOM. My experience is across the board. It's in broadcasting, on the production side, contribution, distribution, on the government side with the U.S. military, on the enterprise side with corporations, but it's specifically related to satellite telecom. So a few months ago, or more than that now, we started working with Guident on a project to add satellite communications to the vehicles that they have to provide I'm sorry, this isn't working, but anyway, I don't like slides anyway. So to provide the connectivity, as I said, that was missing. In conjunction with satellite companies like Intelsat and SES, we are conducting tests with Guident where we'll have satellite antennas on top of their mobile vehicle, a small flat panel antenna. We'll have a larger antenna at their facility in Boca Raton and another one at one of the satellite carrier facilities in Denver, all to facilitate the input of satellite communications when it's required. This is purely a stopgap. It's not meant to be the primary controller of these vehicles. It just wouldn't work. Some of the issues that we will deal with is right now we are using satellites in a geostationary orbit, and for those of you that don't know, it's just far away, and out of all the orbits, it's the one with the most latency. And obviously, in this environment, latency is a huge issue. Once we finish these tests, then we'll start moving down to the lower orbits, and you've all heard about Starlink and these 6,000 satellites that are going up there in the next few years. They're all in a lower Earth orbit, which means that the latency is reduced dramatically, probably to about 20 milliseconds, which is pretty quick. We hope to get this testing done or completed on the GEO system in the next probably 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll move on from there to the LEO systems. So if anybody has any questions about the satellite side of it, I'll welcome it after this. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. Our final speaker for this series is Brandon Thomas of Gray Line. Brandon and his team are also working on the Bay Street Innovation Corridor, providing next-level cybersecurity to the project. I am sure many of you will have questions for Brian, Mr. Thomas, during our Q&A session. So let's have Mr. Thomas join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. And policy piece. On the other side of it, though, is then technology. We have our own technology, a security stack, we call it, of technologies that we use to oversee and observe and make sure that that governance and that policy is being executed as expected. When I say governance and policy, it's certainly some of it is paper and some of it is ideas and concepts, but we actually get into very specific requirements and configurations and expectations among the various systems and tools and technologies being deployed. And we do all of this, of course, to ensure security, to ensure safety of the system. I also want to commend JTA, you know, the fact that this project is structured in this way where I'm here. I have a voice, we have a voice, and a focus, a deliberate, focused effort on this governance and policy to manage the cybersecurity. That's very important and very valuable to this project because, again, you know, each of the vendors, each of the actors within the team, and then external, all have a role to play, all have things they need to do. By having us on the team, by putting that sort of concentrated focus and deliberate effort on this, it really helps go a long way in ensuring security. And given you know, the risk profile of this particular project, this is similar but different to other things public transit agencies do these days. And so again, commending the JTA team for structuring it in this way. It's really progressive, really forward-thinking. When it comes to what we do, you know, fortunately in cybersecurity land, we have a lot of industry best practices to rely on. And I mean that more on the cybersecurity side. So there's a bunch of frameworks, a bunch of sort of regulatory regimes we can look at to figure out exactly how best to protect this network. We also lean, within this particular use case, heavily on other industries, in particular financial services and the defense and intelligence spaces. So because, you know, this is different for transportation to be dealing with technologies that directly affect people in a very intimate way, the risk profile of this particular deployment necessitates a sort of a higher level of what we call maturity. So we're doing more to, again, ensure that safety and security within the program. And so what that means from us operationally, we've not just brought in technology folks. We've gone outside the transportation space to bring in experts from financial services and defense, as I mentioned, areas where cybersecurity and you know, as sort of a life-saving criticality has been managed for, you know, seemingly decades. So bringing that expertise, bringing that knowledge into this project has been really, I think, helpful and advantageous. Because again, there are some aspects of what we're doing here that are, you know, unique, they're new. And so making sure we fill those gaps and we deliver that program and that project to meet that need is, of course, paramount. The last thing I want to talk to you about is this sort of layered approach. So in security land, there's a concept called defense in depth. Basically layers upon layers of things you do to protect the system, the network. This is true of any security program you go into. That's why, you know, when you go to an event and a dignitary is speaking, there's sort of that first perimeter, and then there may be other people later on, multiple perimeters through which the adversary would have to get to have impact. We're applying that same capability here. And, you know, again, because of the unique nature of the risk of this project, it is different than other transportation projects. You know, what you need to do to protect, you know, the headquarters, the email systems, the Wi-Fi on the bus, or, you know, even the driver display unit on the bus, what you need to do to protect that is different than what you need to protect when you have an autonomous shuttle on the road. And so building out that capability, building out that governance, that policy structure is very unique and very different. And then also, of course, the technologies we layer on top to ensure we have that visibility into what's going on within the system is very important. I have heard throughout the day some of the other folks doing other AV stuff around the country. We would love to connect with your security teams because I think there is, again, quite a bit of greenfield in what we're doing. And we believe, you know, we're doing all the right things, of course, but would love to collaborate and coordinate. Would love to be in touch with those folks if possible. But with that, I guess I'll turn it back to Darnell for Q&A.
Yes, sir. Great job. All right. So my first question is going to be for Kevin. Kevin, what are the most critical infrastructure changes and developments that need to be made in urban and rural areas to support the widespread deployment of autonomous vehicles? What challenges do you anticipate in executing these projects?
Okay, I'll start off with the urban areas. The urban areas, depending upon when something was built and how old the city or location, what happens is you have to find a way to get the technology there because it's not good. So when you're doing especially an interstate type project, now, you know, when you're running miles and miles and miles of fiber through a green space, yeah, it's easy to get that fiber in. But when you have to put 30,000 feet of fiber in, okay, that can take a little bit of time. When you have to put 50, 100,000, suddenly the world changes. And just literally things like the number of splices, the loss of signal associated with those splices, things of that nature start to come into play. Then you start talking dollars. One of the big things in civil engineering is when we start talking costs. You add an inch of asphalt, doesn't sound like much. Add a quarter inch doesn't sound like much. But when you spread that out 4 lanes and you run it for 50 miles, all of a sudden you're talking millions upon millions upon millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. The cost dynamics are different. So the cost per mile in an urban situation is higher because you have more obstacles and it's a slower process. For a rural, the cost per mile is lower,
but the total dollars are much higher. And that's usually the biggest challenge. The other thing is, as technology evolves, you're literally tripping over your past, because as you build these things, it takes time. And so when you build something and then your next project picks up off of that one, and after that one, 3, 5, 7 years later, that's the equivalent of ancient history in technology. Everything's changed, so now suddenly your original stuff may not be compatible with the new stuff, and you have a large dynamic there.
Wow, that is big. Ernest, I'm going to come to you next.
Okay.
From an engineering perspective, what innovative design and technology solutions are you implementing to future-proof infrastructure for autonomous vehicles? And how do you ensure these solutions are adaptable to evolving AV technologies?
So, like I mentioned in my presentation, one of the things that, from an engineering perspective, we always looking at is, because technology changes very fast, you got to be flexible. We're talking about communication, for instance. Florida, we're really, really lucky that for years, based on planning, for instance, all the interstates, we have fiber optic communication on every interstate in Florida. Because years ago, we started thinking about ahead, like, okay, what are we going to do? We're not putting only 12 single mode fiber or 36. The state decided, let's blow it out. Let's go 144, both sides of the road. We put in more than we need. So when you're designing or engineering a facility, you got to think about what else can happen. You mentioned traffic signals. Usually traffic signals, local counties and cities, all they care about is, hey, green, red, moving traffic. But now, traffic signals have become hubs. They are locations where you can add a lot of things, a lot of autonomous vehicle infrastructure to relay information from, the vehicles back to a central location. Even the traffic signals are now serving as locations where you can operate and, process information at the site. So you have to be flexible. You got to think about the future, because you don't know what else is going to become available. Another example I'll give is, we all started using DSRC deployment all over the country, because that was the technology, 5.9 gigahertz. That's what was available. And then all of a sudden we realized, nope, the industry said, we're going to V2X. So now, the money and things that you spend all these years deploying DSRC technology, in an instant it became obsolete. And now you got to be nimble, you got to move it. So flexibility is the key. You got to make sure, for instance, our Suntrax, we thought about so many things, but we didn't have the money to build all of it. But then you make sure you have the necessary infrastructure. For instance, basic things like, pool balls, communication access points. Every 200 feet, there is a communication access point. That way in the future, whatever it comes along, you can be able to access that and then use it. So that's kind of flexibility is the key.
Flexibility is the key. I love it. Craig, coming your way. How does the deployment of private 5G networks enhance the functionality and the reliability of autonomous vehicle systems? What are the key factors to consider when integrating 5G with existing infrastructure?
Well, when this project was hatched, the novel concept was having a private LTE network, and that was, 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow.
And the main initiative for that was, of course, cybersecurity, having a closed private network that we control. One of the things that's not widely known about the public carrier networks is that they're optimizing the network for download speed. You see it on TV, fastest network. Well, they're doing downloads. When you're in an autonomous vehicle, we're pushing the data the other direction. We're pushing the telemetry data, the live streaming video, the video intercom sessions, that most of that data is going the other direction.
Wow.
So when you're in a public carrier network that's optimized it's like a fish swimming upstream. So you may think, oh, I'm on a really high-speed network. Well, in reality, it's a really high-speed network going the wrong direction.
Wow.
So that was one of the main initiatives for deploying a private network. For us, during the design development for the project, 5G became widely available. Before, it was just a concept and something that was very talked about. Now it's available at this level. It's accessible to us for technology. So that was an easy pivot. 5G technology really is just a bucket that talks about it covers a bunch of different standards, but one of them is latency. The 5G networks have a much lower latency than previous generations of networks, and that's what enables things like guidance, remote telemetry, or remote teleoperations. Once you have that really low latency, you now can send and receive data to the vehicles, control them remotely, and have a more responsive operation.
Yep. Pretty exciting, young man. Love it. Bill,
Yes,
on
sir.
your way. In what ways do satellite communications complement 4G and 5G wireless networks in ensuring seamless connectivity for autonomous vehicles, especially in remote or less accessible areas?
I think in remote and less accessible areas, one, you're probably going to have a difficult time finding 5G to begin with. So the usage of satellite technology in this environment is really when you lose connectivity, whether it's cell connectivity, whether it's 5G, whatever it is. So I don't see it as a long-term as a long-term fix. It's basically short. As soon as you get the connectivity back, whether it's 5G or whether you know some other sort of cellular, as soon as you get that back, then it's going to switch back. The important thing is that switch is instantaneous. Bang, bang, bang. You just can't lose anything. In this market, it's pretty much the same. You have accuracy, speed, quality, reliability, and then the experience. So the satellite needs to kick in when it's required and provide all of those, just like cell and 5G do.
Awesome. Great. And from the cybersecurity integrator perspective, Brandon, how do you approach the integration of robust cybersecurity measures in the design and deployment of AV infrastructure? And what are the most significant cybersecurity threats that need to be mitigated to ensure the safety and reliability of those autonomous vehicle operations, and for remote assist and remote driving, teleoperation services? Say all that twice.
That's a lot. You know, the reality of an AV system is in some ways it is like any other system, where the vehicle just happens to be an endpoint, just like a laptop is in your office. And so, again, a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the do's and don'ts and the policy and the governance that gets driven off the regulatory regimes on which we rely, they're very similar. It gets down to how we actually implement those thematics, those policies within the environment. At the end of the day, we're protecting endpoints and making sure that those endpoints are only dealing in data that they should be dealing with, because that's, at the end of the day, that's how the adversary is going to have impact, is by affecting the data within the vehicle.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. You make it seem so simple.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to turn it over now to audience. Do we have any audience questions out there? I have one in the back. Yep.
John Q and Jane Q Public to forego their automobile with the independence it provides in favor of the autonomous people mover.
And if I heard you correctly, how are we going to get John Q Public to give up the level of independence in order to allow for this technology to come forward? Yes.
I'll talk a little bit about it. I guess the best way of describing it is kind of like how I went through getting my driver's license. I was very excited to get my driver's license because that was freedom. I got the opportunity to get away from the house, got the opportunity to do things. And then after driving for a few years, the argument changed between my brother and I from who gets to drive to who's going to drive. Because after sitting in traffic, dealing with congestion, and for those of us who've spent time in places such as Orlando, where you naively call it the I-4 parking lot during rush hour because it feels that way, the attitude has changed. Just the sheer number of vehicles and the congestion. So a lot of the folks coming up today, and I've seen this, are less enthusiastic about vehicles. It's a shift in mentality or generation, and it's amazing the number of folks that do not even have driver's license at this point, and they're in their early 20s.
It's true.
And so I see it naturally evolving without, now the love affair for vehicles, yeah, that's going to be around, but I see it changing with people more so than us changing the people themselves. And it has more to do with accessibility and convenience. If somebody can easily get to the mode of trans and conveniently get to where they want to be, that's what they're going to take. The whole thing of taking a car was I could hop in my car and get to my destination. Then you start getting into some of these spots where, okay, I can hop in my car and I can get to this garage about a mile away and walk to my destination. And almost suddenly it's not so much fun. And that creates a big problem, especially in a city or environment. The whole idea, especially with autonomous vehicles and such as the U2C program, is that first mile, last mile, to where, okay, you may be changing modes of transportation from one to another, but if it's convenient and relatively seamless, you'll want to take it because your goal isn't to drive. I mean, your goal is to go to a destination and do what you want to do, shop, eat, etc. It's not to drive. And that's, I think, going to be the biggest change. So people will naturally gravitate towards what's convenient and makes their life better. Because it's how many times has somebody been racing to a traffic light to text versus just sitting in an autonomous vehicle texting and not caring?
I think that's a great answer, quite frankly. And I got to tell you what I think I heard you say is that there are going to be a number of folks who absolutely get there pretty quickly. And then you're going to have some who will eventually get there as they see the benefit of how it meets their needs. I think that was a great example that you put forward. Any other questions that we have out there? We only have time for one more. Otherwise, I'm going to throw one over here to several of my colleagues. Any from the audience? I would say, and I would like to start all the way over with you, Brandon, and work our way back. What do you say to a city that's really doing everything it can to really make the autonomous infrastructure available so that we can really enjoy the fruit of this innovation? When you have so many naysayers who are saying, this will never work. We shouldn't be doing this. What's your answer for that?
Well, it is starting to work. I mean, I think we got wheels hitting the ground for testing within a few months. So, so I guess the proof is the fact that this project is hitting the road soon. So that's one. You know, at a higher level, of course, make sure you pay attention to security, because I think not to toot my horn here, but you know, the security of this goes hand in hand with the execution, because you know, the perception is reality here. And so I think, again, I think getting these vehicles on the road, as we will soon, in the scale that we are, it's going to be, I think, pretty impressive, and it'll really, I think, deflate a lot of that naysayer stuff when they can actually see the physical vehicles on the road.
Awesome. Bill?
You know, again, from an outside view, I think it's got its time and it's got its place, and it's not everywhere. You know, I know a lot of communities where service like this would be very, very welcome and very, very useful. You know, beach communities, for example, retirement communities. It's going to work. Obviously, it's working, but it's just not going to work everywhere. And so, it's whoever wants to use it uses it, and I think they will use it.
That's excellent. Great.
I'd say it feels like we're getting the hook soon. I think, you know, our CEO, Henry Brown, has a phrase he likes to use, hold my beer. Hang on, we're doing it. You know, whatever you see or you think you see happening, it's happening. And sit tight.
Sit tight. I like that. Ernest.
For me, going back to why we're doing this in the first place, safety. Safety, safety, safety. You know, and if we can save one life, you know, the statistics I give 39,000 people, you know, being killed in accidents every day. If it was any other, you know, business or anything, we'll call it, it would be a genocide or something. You know, people are dying every day on our highways because of unsafe driving conditions. So we should keep our eye on the prize, safety, 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 and one day it will be here.
Awesome, awesome.
Bring it home, Kevin. I think the biggest thing of all is everything that's evolved from going from ground to air, aviation, etc., it all takes effort. And those who are willing to put in the effort and make it can make very positive things happen. So it's a matter of staying the course and doing the right thing with a good outlook. There's always going to be the conventional thought that, you know, we don't need to make this change. What we have now works. But the reality is our whole society, everything's evolved by that innovation and staying that course. And again, doing things with the right intent.
Well, we certainly do have the right intent. So, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your expertise. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thanks to our speakers. Well, we've come to the end of our second National Autonomous Vehicle Day. Thank you for celebrating National AV Day with us. Now allow me to invite Nat Ford, our CEO of the JTA, to the stage to give closing remarks, followed by Mr. Harold Braun, CEO of Guident Corp., to give closing remarks, and then I'll return for some final announcements. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. And I see we had some folks who hung in here to the bitter end, but we had visitors from around the globe and they had to get to the airport and get back to home over this weekend. So next year, mark your calendars. We'll be doing it again, National AV Day next year. And it'll be a little bit different because expect to leave this facility and get an opportunity to be some of the first customers on the U2C project, the Bay Street Innovation Corridor. At that juncture, we will have our complement of vehicles, we'll have the control center built, the AIC center will be completed, and we'll be probably doing what we call the final touches, so to speak, in terms of delivering the project. You know, technology is best when it brings people together, and I think today we accomplished what we wanted to do. Bring everybody together. I think everybody would agree that we learned a lot. I mean, I sat right in front and center because there's still so much that's being developed with this technology, questions that need to be asked. And so I just want to say thank you for being here and sticking with us and coming together to make sure this happens. I got to take a moment. This would not happen without all of the sponsors who supported us, so thank you for that. All of the moderators, the speakers, they did a fantastic job. I got the entire list here, but I'm not going to do that. I know I'm standing in between you and your weekend, but I got to stop. I have to stop and just recognize the JTA staff who were volunteered or voluntold to be here and help support this event, but they did a fantastic job. Won't you join me in a round of applause? Greer Gillis, Kit Din, Angie Williams, you guys did a fantastic job putting this together while you're building a world-class autonomous vehicle network. And so we add this on because we think it's very important for educational process and coming together and learning a lot more about our program. And I'll tell you something, it's clearly, you took this vision and you took it to velocity. And the velocity of the work you're doing is being recognized by the world, and you deserve a round of applause. And for all of our panelists and speakers. It's all about partnerships. I don't want to leave anybody out. You all know who you are. You know what you did to get this to this point, and I appreciate your work. And to our guests, thank you for being here also. When we meet again next year, be ready to take a ride on Bay Street. If there's one thing that's clear from all of our learnings and discussions, it's this. The future of autonomous vehicle technology is very bright in our country. It's bright in Jacksonville, it's bright in Florida, and we are right in the center of where it's happening. So have a wonderful afternoon and evening, and thank you once again for coming and helping us to make this National AV Day gathering here in Jacksonville with people from around the globe. It's just imagine when we started this, we never knew that we'd become an international event, so to speak. 150 people who were actually watching the live stream. We were keeping track of that, and so the reach was far and wide, and it's for a good purpose. It's for the people that we all care about and helping them move around our communities and this country in a very dignified and high-tech and world-class way. So with that, thank you, and I'll see you again next year. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Harold Braun.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So not a lot of people are here anymore, right? So I hope we didn't overwhelm you. So great event. So let me wrap up from my point of view what I heard. First of all, I heard that autonomous vehicle deployment is happening worldwide. That was one of the reasons I said earlier this morning. We want to have a global audience here and also global speakers. So what we heard is it's happening from Japan over Europe to the US. It's happening everywhere. For me, there's no doubt whatsoever that we will see this more and more happening. And it will be faster than we think. The technology is developing much faster than we think, and the deployments will also happening much faster than we think. And of course, we heard also a commitment from NET today, what's happening next year, right? So that's really exciting. Second thing, what I heard is that there were new ideas generated here last year. That's exactly what we wanted. The communication between organizations, communications between vendors, the ecosystem partners. As I mentioned earlier, there are no competitors. As my view, we have to shape this industry together. This is a call for actions for us all to shape the industry. Well, that's very encouraging what I heard, that ideas were generated, that ideas got into a roadmap, that ideas get into deployments. As for us, we heard very loud and clear last year from a blind person, I have to know at every single second where I am in the vehicle. I want to talk to somebody, right? And others told us, well, it would be great to see somebody. When I don't see a driver, I need to see somebody. Well, passenger communication model at the MICA right now, you can see it. We heard it, we put it on a roadmap, and we did it. So there is a lot of these things which we hear, and that is communication. That's what we want from these conferences, the dialogue and the input from different areas. Number 3, 21st century problems or challenges. Let me not talk about problems, it's challenges, and it's actually good challenges, We cannot solve them, and somebody said it earlier, with 19th centuries ideas. That is not going to work. And therefore, we have the skills, we have the power, and we have the experiences to make that a change, get over the paradigms of cannot do. Yes, we can do it, and we have also not only the knowledge, as we heard today from Paul Newman, there are so many interactions with so many different people. One thing I don't know whether you realize that, almost every speaker, it's an age thing, right? Almost every speaker today did not start in the autonomous industry. Well, they are in the autonomous industry now. But what is the good news about it? They have so many different experience from different industry which are merged now to a new industry and bring that together and then do things differently than a lot of people who are, for a long time in the industry. We are developing this industry new. That is an absolutely amazing things. And we're doing that for people. That is the last point on the observations. We're doing that for people. I heard many, many, many times, we change the life for people. It is for the people. It is for the ridership. The person has to be, encouraged to go into these vehicles, go into the Holland, go into the Mika, go into these things and the AV shuttles and experience it. That is our challenge. We need to have more of these vehicles here. We need to make sure people experience autonomous vehicles. That is fantastic. Lesson learned number one, and I heard that also last year. Last mile. How do we address the last mile? And some call it micro transport. There's a lot of words for it. I have an analogy for that, and I'm a telecommunication guy. And we had the same issue with the last mile in telecommunication. We had to have a cable to your house until the technology changed, until we had wireless. And we beamed 10 megabits per second, 100 megabits per second, up to 1 gig and 1 gig more to your house, to your location, wirelessly. There was no, the last mile was somehow solved. Whether that was with the established mobile provider or it was with the cable companies. We put triple services on a cable, quadruple play on a cable. That was not done before. So we solved the last mile, long thing. I see the same thing, and I was in the middle of it. And thanks God we developed a triple play, and I know what that means. Here's the same thing. We have to solve the last mile. What is the changing technology for this? We had wireless in the telecommunication industry. We have AVs here. We have the autonomous vehicle technology here. We can solve the last mile, and we need to start. Do we need to start already with door-to-door services, right? One vehicle to anywhere in the world? Well, we get there, but we can start. We need to start somewhere. I learned that today, very clear, and we have to think about that. We have to solve the last mile, and we will. We have the technology, we have the people, and we have also the skills to make that happen. Last point, or maybe second to the last point, I think Kim said it. We have to, I call it, we have to build mind share. We have to make sure that we build mind share with the people. That means we have to make sure that the blind person experiences it and has this wow effect. The 99-year-old man called earlier have the same experience. Wow, I didn't know that happened in my lifetime. Right? Yeah. Frank, you said it, right? So that are the real changes that people go into that and say, wow, right? And this, we have to build that mind share. So until it gets to a usual place, hey, where is it, right? Remember the swipe? You did the first swipe on the cell phone, on the eye? You still remember that to the day, right? That swipe moment we need in that industry, and we will get there. And we got a free lesson today from the University of Oxford, from my friend Paul. And this is a technology, generative AI, which you heard, which help us to get to deployments faster, because we can test faster, we can have conditions tested we can do a lot of things with generative AI. It will happen. It's there. And when you see the fakes you saw, we had more fakes on the presentation today than real photos, but this fakes helps us to test this environment. So that will also accelerate the entire situation. So from a technology perspective, I'm happy, and I think we did that what we said we would do in the beginning. I hope you feel the same. And with that, I thank everyone, in particular also the team at JTA. It's a wonderful experience to work with them. And you know, with Angie and Greer and everybody else, Ned, in your organization, top notch, absolutely fantastic. And we love to work with you, and hopefully we can build this industry together and push it. Thanks very much. I see you next year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you, Mr. Braun, and thank you all for being here. Just a couple of announcements for you. Please leave your badges, at least the badge holders. We want to definitely keep those. So before you leave, please place them on the table. To all the speakers, presenters, volunteer and planning staff, and demonstrators, we want to take one group photo in front of the National Autonomous Vehicle Day sign before you leave. And then most importantly, Mr. Ford would be very remiss if we didn't take this opportunity to thank the JTA and the Guident planning teams for putting on a phenomenal event for today. And we definitely want to give them a shout out. Yes, standing ovation to captains Angie Williams, to captains Terry Smith, and then the entire team from Guident, Harold, Fabio, and Miss Anna. And of course, Chris, Alyssa, Kit, Anthony, Eddie, Corey, Marcus, Haley, Jeff, Javier, Samir, Amy, and Jessica. Thank you so very much. And to all of the volunteers everywhere, thank you. Thank you for what you did today in helping us to stand up a very successful National AV Day. Have a great rest of the day and a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.